votes to find out who will form the next government. I'm your host, Jody Ann Quarry, and with me here is Sanjay Lewis. Hi, Sanjay.
Hi, Jody.
We're going to be talking today about the critical constituencies here that we've decided are going to make the difference in this election. Do you think that there are 5, 10, 20, or even 30 constituencies that may make the difference as Jamaica decides who forms next government?
Well, there are a number of constituencies that are considered marginal. Those are the constituencies to watch, and those are the ones that all eyes are on tonight as the ballots close at 5 o'clock this evening.
There are about 21 constituencies, Sanjay, that have been determined to have been won in the last general election by 1,000 votes or less. But we seem to be focusing on even less than 21. Help me understand why you think some of these constituencies are some of the key ones to focus on.
Well, you have some key ones because of the voting pattern that has been happening in the constituency and the work that has been happening, and also who are in those constituencies. So, for example, and we're going to dwell on a few of them in a little bit, but there are some key ones based on who are there. For example, in St. Catherine, where you have, for example, you would have a number of individuals over that side who many persons are looking at. Well, you know Robert Miller versus Colin Fagan.
And that's in St. Catherine Southeastern.
That's one constituency,
yes,
definitely to watch. And there are a few others you have in St. Anne, for example, St. Anne North and St. Anne East, that you definitely persons are watching.
We have to be watching these constituencies, Sanjay, because there is no clear indication at even 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, even maybe 3 o'clock today, who will be winning those constituencies. How do you feel that voters in those constituencies feel about them being in what have been dubbed battleground seats?
Well, you know, one of the things that I recognize that the parties are doing, they're trying to get the votes out early. It's critical that they get them out early. So you have the early votes, and then you have what is called the late votes, that when they do their canvassing, they will recognize who have not voted in the early part of the day, and now they have to focus on getting those persons out before the polls close at 5 o'clock, because it's very important. So at about this time around, they should be doing their checks to see how many persons have voted, how many more they need to get inside the ballot box, and I think that's where the focus is right now.
Earlier today, we caught up with the leader of the People's National Party, Dr. Peter Phillips, and we'll go to that interview with him now.
We are very confident that the People's National Party will be victorious.
You still think that you're going to get 40 seats?
I have not put a number on it. I think we will have the majority of the seats. I didn't rely on the polls for that indication, but I believe the momentum is with the People's National Party. And we are going to build on that momentum throughout this day and do what we have to do.
What do you credit it with?
With the hard work of the comrades in the field, with the communication of our message regarding the state of the country, with the communication of our plans as to what we want to do to put the people's agenda at the center of our concerns. And I think all those things combined.
First order of business, should the PNP win this election?
First order of business would be to name a cabinet, establish a cabinet and a government that is prepared to take on the task.
COVID remains a major issue for many Jamaicans.
It is a central issue. It is at the heart of much of what we have included in our welfare plan and in our manifesto. It is important for the country and indeed for the world to find a way of stabilizing our economic affairs and in fact building a sound foundation for our economic future.
Would you lock down the country, sir? Would you lock down the country?
The first thing we need to do is to there's nothing which is off the table, let's put it that way, but we have to have both life preserved to a much greater degree than has been the case now, and at the same time we have to ensure that people can earn a living. So between both of those things, we are going to proceed putting the health and well-being of our people first.
And that was Dr. Peter Phillips, the leader of the People's National Party. You heard his comments, Sanjay, especially with him not saying that he was getting a 40-seat win today, saying that he didn't say that. Is that surprising for you, hearing that from the leader?
It's not surprising at all. I think that the People's National Party, they have been pretty measured. To some extent, you have heard different members saying 40, but for the most part, as it relates to the leader, what I've recognized is that he has said that they will win. As to a number, he has been very cautious in how he would give a prediction. And I'm not surprised at all why he would do that, especially because when you look at the polls have been pretty consistent with the JLP leading in the polls. But he has also been consistent in stating that the real poll is really on election day, which is today.
The real poll is today, but we have seen at least 3 major polls indicating that the People's National Party trailed the Jamaica Labour Party. Are you thinking that the People's National Party must have some insight that the pollsters have not seen to continue to remain confident?
I think that, one, you have to remain confident because you have to shore up your base. That's clear. So the confidence must remain. But I think also a spoke in the wheel is COVID. And while the polls may say one thing, you have COVID that's there, you have rains that's there, and the mobilization. So I think the People's National Party must remain confident. They have to mobilize their base. COVID is out there, so they have to be very careful with how they go about getting persons out. And of course, as I mentioned before, they just have to remain confident. You cannot for a second give the impression to your base that you're not confident, because if you do that, then they will not come out to vote.
Breaking news came out after this interview, Sanjay, where Dr. Peter Phillips is recorded as saying that if he lost this election, he would not only stand down as leader of the party, but leave representational politics. What's your reaction to that?
Well, I was a little bit surprised when I heard that. Actually, when I heard the statement, I actually had to double check. Did he actually say that? And so early in the day, because if Dr. Phillips is saying that, it could be a sign of defeat.
A sign that he is not confident, or a sign that he is so confident that he can make such a statement?
In my mind, I think it's a sign of defeat.
Is it a sign of preparation then for you for the handing over of power in the People's National Party as well?
Could possibly be.
We also had an interview with Prime Minister Andrew Holness earlier today. Let's take a look at that as well.
Well, the report I got this morning is that in almost all constituencies, the turnout is as they have expected. Based upon their canvass and their polling, the turnout seems to be in the region that they were expecting, which is between 55 and 60%. That's the turnout they are expecting. The turnout has been heavy in the morning. So it would appear to me that persons are calculating rain, calculating other issues, and trying to get to the polling station early. It seems to me as well that it is generally peaceful. Persons are coming out to exercise their franchise in peace. As it relates to COVID, that is lingering in the minds of people. The increased numbers would have created a concern. But I think people are getting the message that we have to go about our business, following the protocols and learning to live with the disease, because we can't all hide away from the disease. So it's about being strategic in how you configure, how you do your business. You know, look, I put myself forward to the people, and I have to always be prepared for whichever outcome. But I think I still have many more years of service to the people of Jamaica. I'm my greatest critic, and I think that I have done fairly well. I think I could have still done much better, but with regard to the circumstances and the deck of cards that I was dealt, I think I did fairly well, and I think that has been reflected poll after poll after poll in terms of the people's views.
So you read the poll?
No, as I say, the headlines you can't escape, but I don't use polls to determine how I act, because at the end of the day, I don't see myself as a populist. It's always about trying to do what is in the best interest of the nation and the people.
And that was leader of the Jamaica Labour Party, Andrew Holness. He served as Prime Minister, and maybe later this evening he'll continue to serve as Prime Minister-elect given the election results. But you just heard him indicate that based on the figures, voter turnout this morning was high. EOJ has issued a release that at around 11 o'clock, we're looking at approximately 16% voter turnout, which is on average for the 2016 election. Are you thinking that that's the best the day will show, or are you expecting greater numbers?
It's going to pick up. It's going to pick up throughout the day. What you recognize is, as I mentioned earlier, in the morning you will see that the parties will push to get as many persons out, because you have the factor of rain, you have persons who have to go to work, so the party will focus on that. And then in the later part of the afternoon, they will now make their last-ditch approach to get more persons to vote.
Overall, what was your perception of how the Prime Minister presented himself to the nation a moment ago? It seemed very somber.
Yes, that was my exact wording. I think the Prime Minister was pretty somber, and he was very cautious in his response. Even when he was asked about the polls, he mentioned that he's not focusing so much on the polls, and he also mentioned that he could have done more. So you recognize he's very cautious in his response, but generally speaking, I'm not surprised based on his response by the Prime Minister. Not surprised at all.
This is your afternoon edition of Decision 2020, where Jamaica decides who will form the next government. Stay with us here on TVJ.
2020, the year of the most twists and turns, and we've got you covered. Decision 2020, COVID-style coverage. From the opening of the polls across Jamaica, our teams will bring you ballot-by-ballot coverage. We'll give you the latest voters count, spiced with our experienced analysts. Which party will form the next government? TVJ's Decision 2020, we've got you covered.
It's the big one.
We are going to create the new Jamaica.
This team is ready to rescue Jamaica.
2020, the year of the most twists and turns, and we've got you covered. Decision 2020, COVID-style coverage. From the opening of the polls across Jamaica, our teams will bring you ballot-by-ballot coverage. We'll give you the latest voters count, spiced with our experienced analysts. Which party will form the next government? TVJ's Decision 2020, we've got you covered.
Reduce your risk of viral illnesses like the flu and coronavirus. Wash your hands frequently with soap and water. Cover your nose and mouth when coughing with a tissue and dispose of it. Avoid close contact with anyone with a cold or flu-like symptoms. If you become ill, please visit your doctor or the nearest health center and share your travel history. The flu and coronavirus can kill. Let's protect each other. A message from the Ministry of Health and Wellness.
It's the big one.
We are going to create the new Jamaica.
This team is ready to rescue Jamaica.
The date is set.
The general elections for the year 2020 is therefore Thursday, September the 3rd, 2020.
Even with the COVID-19 pandemic, TVJ News has every beat covered. Join us for Decision 2020.
This team is ready to rescue Jamaica.
We are going to create the new Jamaica.
Decision 2020, comprehensive election coverage. Weeknights in primetime news and our special election program. TVJ News, keeping you informed.
2020, the year of the most twists and turns, and we've got you covered. Decision 2020, COVID-style coverage. From the opening of the polls across Jamaica, our teams will bring you ballot-by-ballot coverage. We'll give you the latest voters count, spiced with our experienced analysts. Which party will form the next government? TVJ's Decision 2020, we've got you covered.
It's the big one.
Thanks so much for staying with us in your afternoon edition of Decision 2020 as we take a look at Jamaica deciding who will form the next government. I'm Jodie Ann Quarry. With me today we have Sanjay Lewis, and just joining us we have political commentator Javian Nelson. Hi Javian.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Of course, it's our pleasure to have you here. We're taking a look at the comments that were made by Prime Minister Andrew Holness and Opposition Leader Dr. Peter Phillips. And Dr. Peter Phillips has indicated that if he were to lose today's election, he would step down not only as party leader but from representational politics overall. What's your reaction to that?
It's a strange statement to make on a day like today, especially so early into the game when I think, people want to be energized and to go to vote. It was quite uncanny that he would have said that, and I see a lot of people, some people calling in on the radio station, some people tweeting online and stuff saying, why would somebody make such a statement on a day like today?
Do you think it's a mark of him being very, very confident that he will do well, or a mark that he's afraid that this will be the beginning of the end for him?
I'm not quite sure, actually. Perhaps it is that he thinks all will be well, as you said, or he's perhaps just unsure of what the outcome of the election is. But I think it can have a negative impact on his own supporters. So, it shouldn't have been said, I think.
Overall, we're looking at some of those constituencies that we think will make the difference in today's election. What are some of the constituencies that jump out for you as places to watch that may decide the end result today?
Well, as you know, I'm from Clarendon, so Clarendon has all of 4 hot seats that's been contested, with North Central and Southeastern Clarendon being the hottest, with Robert Nestor Morgan and Brennan in North Central, and Patricia Duncan Sutherland and Pernell Charles Junin in Southeastern. And I think those are 2 of the seats to watch. Very, very interesting. I hear it's fairly quiet in those seats, and things are, popping up, and people are quite motivated and excited to go out and vote. The other day my father called me asking me, how is it looking for the candidates in North Central, because he's from that constituency originally. But there are others, of course. People are looking at Dayton Campbell's seat, for example.
And the impact of a third candidate, an independent candidate that may make
National Party.
And he may make a significant impact in the election, splitting the votes, as has been potentially alleged that may happen since he's coming from the People's National Party. Overall, though, we'll take a look at these seats in depth with you and Sanjay going through. You both have numbers in front of you. There's clearly a lot of research that went into this. Before we take a look at that, though, help me understand. Each of us have ink-stained fingers. What was the voting like for you today, Sanjay?
Well, I voted in St. Andrew, North Central, and one of the things I recognize is that the lines, I voted in PD 40, the lines, it was extremely long, the line that I was in. The other thing that I recognize, they had proper sanitization from the start to the end. When you went to the presiding officer, you had to sanitize. Before you dip your finger in the ink, you had to sanitize. So the process was well done for me.
Yes.
The wait was a little bit long, but outside of that, very good process.
You were in Kingston. You went all the way to Clarendon to go vote.
Yeah, so I went back home to vote. I'm one of the voters who can't find their national ID, so I had to take the oath. Pretty seamless. There was a little bit of wait outside. We had the social distance. There were some people sitting under trees just waiting because they didn't want to stand up. I saw one blind person being assisted by one of the party supporters to go in and make his vote. For me, it was quite easy. One of the EOJ workers came, asked the name just before I went in, ensured that they found the stuff and started writing up stuff. So when I went in, it was pretty easy. It didn't take as long as people would say, it would take. I had to do my fingerprint, index finger, middle finger on both hands. But it was quite easy.
So a good process for you as well. Clarendon and Kingston represented here in the voting process. But let's talk about one of those marginal constituencies and go to our reporter on the ground now, Karen Madden, who's in St. Andrew Eastern, giving us a live report there. Hi, Karen.
So we're at the St. Peter and Paul Prep School on Old Hope Road in Eastern St. Andrew, where incumbent Favour Williams of the Jamaica Labour Party, along with her husband Leo, cast their votes just after 9 o'clock this morning. She had a slight hiccup after arriving at the voting centre in a JLP branded shirt and was turned away as the electoral officers told her she had to remove the branded shirt. She went to her vehicle, changed into a plain green T-shirt and was able to vote alongside her husband. Mrs. Williams is the first woman to win this constituency, where in 2016 she defeated then MP Andre Hilton of the People's National Party by a mere 161 votes. But she says she's confident of victory.
Very confident. I'm running based on my record of performance in the constituency, and which we have publicized so that all the residents could see what has happened in different communities. I feel very confident in the organizational structure that's in place across the constituency. I've been checking in on them to see what's happening, and everything seemed to be running smoothly this morning. This morning here, I had to go through that process, and it was there every step of the way in terms of sanitizing, people wearing their mask. When you got your pencil, it was, sanitized and so forth and so on. So we did our best to get the information out to the voters. Sometimes I talked with them one-on-one to give them additional confidence to come out. And so I believe that today they will come out with that assurance.
Now, Mrs. Williams' challenger is Venetia Phillips, the sitting councillor of the Papine Division, and she arrived to vote accompanied by cheering supporters. She was concerned, though, about low voter turnout.
Well, we got off to a smooth start. Certainly my team got in place quite early, and we were satisfied that the stations were opened on time and without incidents. So we were comfortable with that. As the day progressed, however, we found that the voting was particularly slow in some areas than in others, but we encourage both our voters as well as our workers to ensure that they just be patient and that the practice of social distance is paramount, and we have provided extra masks and we are assisting with the sanitizing process because we have our own to offer to those who come. But we're okay with the pace at which it has been going. The turnout, I'm watching, I'm still a little bit, I'm hoping that the turnout will be a little bit more than it has been so far. But all things considered with COVID, I believe it is understandable.
Based on the turnout, about your chances?
Well, put it this way, what is it that you all in the media always say, that a low turnout favors who? So at the end of the day, whether or not the turnout is high or low, I believe that at the end of this evening, the people of Eastern St. Andrew would send a message, certainly, that they want to see sturdy, steady, sustainable, and thought-out leadership.
There are reports of one of the electronic voting machines in this constituency having issues. Have you heard about that?
I have had complaints in 2 sections, actually. And when I checked with EOJ, they did confirm that the machines were moving in some places a little bit slow than they expected they would have, and so they moved to actually address it. I have not had that complaint since I've been moving around since that time, and that was over an hour ago or so. So I'm hoping that the people will come out. The weather has been kind to us, so I'm hoping that the good people of Eastern St. Andrew will turn out in the afternoon just to make sure, later this afternoon, to make sure that we seal that deal.
What do you think the vote margin will look like later this evening?
Well, I'm thinking that it will be anywhere in the ballpark of 200. Yes, so I'm thinking that there will be a 200 difference in terms of the margin.
And if you are victorious this evening, how do you plan to celebrate?
Well, put it this way. Of course, it will be, my way of celebrating would be to justify the faith of the people of Eastern St. Andrew in me to be their team leader, because that's what we need. Someone who is committed to the task, someone who wants to hit the ground running, and to make sure that we return sustainability and hope and promise, and to bring some good work to Eastern St. Andrew. We are a rich constituency. We don't have to appear support.
Now there are 27,384 registered voters in this constituency, a swing seat where the PNP's founding father, Norman Manley, defeated Edward Fagan of the JLP in the 1944 elections. That's the first elections after universal adult suffrage. It could go either way, as we said, a swing seat. In 1993, the PNP's Colin Campbell won and became a two-term MP before being unseated by St. Aubin Bartlett of the JLP to also be a two-term MP. Then 2011, the PNP's Andre Hilton fended off Sapphire Longmore of the Jamaica Labour Party. Hilton would, however, taste defeat in 2016 by the present incumbent, Favour Williams. At the present time, still looking at some ominous clouds up above, but the sun is still valiantly fighting. Slow voter turnout so far in this constituency, but we cannot see that the COVID-19 protocols are being observed for the most part, especially as it relates to mask wearing. Some amount of challenges for the election day workers when it comes on to social distancing or physical distancing, if you will. But for now, on behalf of the team here in Eastern St. Andrew, it's back to you, Jody.
Thanks so much, Karen Madden. She gave us a live report there from St. Andrew Eastern, one of those battleground constituencies that we're looking at. Favour Williams, sitting Member of Parliament, against Venetia Phillips, councillor hoping to become Member of Parliament. I start off first with you, Javian. What are your thoughts about this constituency?
Well, definitely one of those tough constituencies. One of the things that strike me about St. Andrew Eastern is that unlike some constituencies where you can almost see a clear pattern to say, well, one party has been gaining more ground over the other. If you look on the numbers for the divisions, Papine Division and the Mona Division, both parties keep increasing the numbers. So it's not a case where, for example, JLP might be increasing in Papine where Venetia is the councillor, and then the PNP is not performing similarly in the Mona Division. So both divisions increasing, so I think it's going to be a tough one. I think it's going to be close again. Last time was what? Just a little over 100?
161.
Right, so it's going to be a tough one. I think it's going to be, as people have been saying, one of the seats that actually helps to determine who is the winner tonight.
Sanjay, 161 votes divided Andre Hilton from Favour Williams and led Favour Williams to victory in 2016. You just heard Venetia Phillips say that she doesn't think the decision will be more than 200 votes dividing the person who wins and the person who loses. What does that say about how tough a constituency St. Andrew Eastern is?
I mean, she's spot on, and Javian is correct. When you watch the pattern of that constituency, it's hard to track how the persons vote. But you recognize when you look at Mona Division and Papine Division, one of the things that the JLP will have to do if they want to win that constituency, they have to focus heavily on the Mona Division. The PNP, naturally, they have to focus heavily on the Papine Division that Venetia Phillips is a sitting councillor. I don't expect, as Venetia mentioned, anybody that win that seat, it's not going to be greater than 200, 300 votes. Tonight.
But Sanjay, part of the problem with the Papine Division for at least Venetia Phillips is that in the last RJR Gleaner Don Anderson poll, she was trailing even in the division. She was councillor. She was trailing both in the Papine and the Mona divisions and trailing Favour Williams by what some would consider a considerable margin. Now, she's dismissed those polls, but they still show that even as councillor, she isn't quite making up the kind of ground she would hope.
That was a little bit surprising for me, and she's mentioning a low voter turnout. If this trend continues, I think that Venetia Phillips may be in problems tonight.
It may be problems indeed, but we'll be watching all the constituencies as we take a look at the decision Jamaica will make. Stay with us for Jamaica Decides 2020. It's a decision 2020. Who will form our next government? Stay with us here on TVJ.
2020, the year of the most twists and turns, and we've got you covered. Decision 2020 COVID-style coverage. From the opening of the polls across Jamaica, our teams will bring you ballot-by-ballot coverage. We'll give you the latest voters count, spiced with our experienced analysts. Which party will form the next government? TVJ's Decision 2020, we've got you covered.
It's the big one.
We are going to create the new Jamaica.
This team is ready to rescue Jamaica.
2020, the year of the most twists and turns, and we've got you covered. Decision 2020 COVID-style coverage. From the opening of the polls across Jamaica, our teams will bring you ballot-by-ballot coverage. We'll give you the latest voters count, spiced with our experienced analysts. Which party will form the next government? TVJ's Decision 2020, we've got you covered.
Reduce your risk of viral illnesses like the flu and coronavirus. Wash your hands frequently with soap and water. Cover your nose and mouth when coughing with a tissue and dispose of it. Avoid close contact with anyone with a cold or flu-like symptoms. If you become ill, please visit your doctor or the nearest health center and share your travel history. The flu and coronavirus can kill. Let's protect each other. A message from the Ministry of Health and Wellness.
It's the big one.
We are going to create the new Jamaica.
This team is ready to rescue Jamaica.
The date is set.
The general elections for the year 2020 is therefore Thursday, September the 3rd, 2020.
Even with the COVID-19 pandemic, TVJ News has every beat covered. Join us for Decision 2020.
This team is ready to rescue Jamaica.
We are going to create the new Jamaica.
Decision 2020. Comprehensive election coverage. Weeknights in primetime news and our special election program. TVJ News, keeping you informed.
2020, the year of the most twists and turns, and we've got you covered. Decision 2020 COVID-style coverage. From the opening of the polls across Jamaica, our teams will bring you ballot-by-ballot coverage. We'll give you the latest voters count, spiced with our experienced analysts. Which party will form the next government? TVJ's Decision 2020, we've got you covered.
It's the big one.
We are going to create the new Jamaica.
This team is ready to rescue Jamaica.
2020, the year of the most twists and turns, and we've got you covered. Decision 2020 COVID-style coverage. From the opening of the polls across Jamaica, our teams will bring you ballot-by-ballot coverage. We'll give you the latest voters count, spiced with our experienced analysts. Which party will form the next government? TVJ's Decision 2020, we've got you covered.
Reduce your risk of viral illnesses like the flu and coronavirus. Wash your hands frequently with soap and water. Cover your nose and mouth when coughing with a tissue and dispose of it. Avoid close contact with anyone with a cold or flu-like symptoms. If you become ill, please visit your doctor or the nearest health center and share your travel history. The flu and coronavirus can kill. Let's protect each other. A message from the Ministry of Health and Wellness.
Back to your afternoon edition of Decision 2020, where Jamaica votes to decide who will form the next government. I'm Jody Ann Quarry, and with me are Sanjay Lewis and Javian Nelson, and we're going to be taking a look at all the hot seat constituencies that we think will decide this election. We have an on-the-ground reporter, though, there in Clarendon Southeast. We're joining Dwayne Anderson as he gives us a live report there from the constituency. Hi, Dwayne.
Thanks, Jody. So I'm at the Very Technical High School here in Southeast Clarendon. It is located in the bastion of the People's National Party support here in Hayes. Now, earlier before I came to Hayes, I was in the JLP stronghold in Rocky Point here in Southeast Clarendon. And there's something I noticed about these two strongholds. For some reason, supporters in strongholds here in Southeast Clarendon follow the safety protocols way less than any other community that I've visited. And another thing, it seems as though disobedience in strongholds is being rewarded, because the persons who are not wearing masks, they're not social distancing, not sanitizing, they are not spacing out, they seem to be getting through a lot quicker than in the communities that I visit where persons are observing social distance. So that is something that the authorities may need to look into. As it relates to the persons in these strongholds, adults, children, the elderly alike, it's just revelry, just vibes. No social distancing, no sanitizing. Could be worrying for the spread of the COVID-19 here in Southeast Clarendon. Earlier today, I spoke with the JLP's Pernell Charles Jr. and the PNP's Patricia Duncan Sutherland, and they expressed frustration about the delay that is happening at some polling stations, and they said they spoke with authorities to have that resolved. Now, rain has threatened all day in Southeast Clarendon. In fact, I've been getting reports from some of my colleagues and friends up in Northern Clarendon that there's some rain up that side. But I tell you what, rain will not be to blame if there's a low turnout here in Southeast Clarendon. It has threatened all day, but now it is just humid. It is actually hot. You can probably see some beads of sweat welling up on my face. It's getting very hot. So there won't be any rain here today, judging by how the sky looks right now. And as I said earlier, I visited several communities, about 7 communities, and from my eye test of what is happening, I would say that the voters are coming out. They are not staying away due to the pandemic, based on what I'm seeing, and they are not staying away because of threat of rain. Now, just to remind folks or people watching on television Jamaica that over 40,000 persons are registered to vote here in Southeast Clarendon. Now, the camps are suggesting that if we get anywhere close to the 18,000 or so that voted in 2016, we could be in for another ding-dong battle like what happened in 2011 when about 100 votes secured victory for the JLP. And talking about secured victory for the JLP has won this seat on every occasion except twice. So this seat tends to favor the JLP, but the Patricia Duncan Sutherland of the PNP believes she can get it this time because Pernell Charles Jr. only came here in March after a by-election, which the PNP did not contest. She's been here about 6 years, and she says she's known by the people and she's going to take it home. But Pernell Charles is equally confident. Now, of course, in 2016, it was the JLP's Rudyard Spencer who ran. He's resigned, and Pernell Charles has taken over from him. As you can see, perhaps if my cameraman gets an opportunity, you'll notice that there are some supporters of the Jamaica Labour Party in the background to my right here at the Vera Technical High School. And then even further to my right is a camp set up for the People's National Party. They're outdoor agents doing their work, trying to ensure that their voters come in and can get to vote as early as possible. I'll be doing another round in the Southeast constituency before my next report, and I'll be sure to look out for whatever newsworthy thing, exciting thing that might be of interest to our viewers on television Jamaica. So until then, that's it from me. Back to you in the studios, Jody.
Thanks so much, Dwayne Anderson, there in Clarendon Southeast, another constituency we're watching here as one of those deciding ones for this general election. Sanjay, I'm not asking the man from Clarendon just yet. Let me talk to you, because you have Patricia Duncan Sutherland and Pernell Charles Jr. in that constituency. Pernell Charles Jr., as you'd have recalled, only came into the constituency in March in a by-election uncontested by the People's National Party. Do you think his chances are better or worse because he didn't have to go in there with any competition?
No, I think that when you look at both candidates, they're pretty good candidates. The JLP have a solid organization, but at the same time, Patricia Duncan Sutherland would have been working in the constituency for a long time, and she's one of the candidates who would have stayed, not leave the constituency when she lost in the last general election. She remained, but at the same time, even though Pernell Charles Jr. is new to the constituency, he went there with a solid organization, and I think that is what he's relying on. But when you look at both candidates. They're very good candidates. It's going to come right down to the wire. And as Dwayne mentioned, there are two, Rocky Point and Vere, those divisions. The PNP division, which is a stronghold there, Rocky Point for the JLP, they have to ensure that they get out the votes in these two divisions. But it's going to come right down to the wire. This is one definitely to watch.
You're expecting, therefore, them to overperform in their stronghold areas and then hoping that they'll do well in the others to win. But Javian, help me out. In this constituency, you have a member of parliament who's just come in and someone who's been working there for years. How much does that matter to a voter who may not have seen their member of parliament work, but has seen someone in that constituency dedicated to it for 6 years?
Well, first of all, I think it's important to acknowledge that this seat we have two extremely good candidates, high caliber, and I think the way forward for the country is that we need candidates like this. We don't want to have one person is good and then the next person just doesn't make sense, right? I think Patricia, having been there for about 6 years plus, makes a significant difference, I think. And I think it's going to help her. Whether or not it helps her to cross the finish line later is another question, but I think it has a real good impact. I think the challenge, though, is that at one point, seemingly quite a lot of her support was the fact that a lot of people were also displeased with the previous member of parliament. So I think the interesting thing to see now is how has she managed to improve on her performance, on her state in the constituency. I know Pernell Charles Jr. has worked in the seat as well and that he's been doing some good things, but Patricia has also done some stuff. And I think both of them seem to have very, very good ideas for what they want for the constituency, but it's important to note that based on the numbers, PNP only has one strong division in the constituency, and I think that's the Hayes division, right? The JLP has the other three divisions, Mineral Heights, Palmer's Cross, and Rocky Point, and it's been a hotbed from the other day. We've heard lots and lots of stuff coming out. I heard both of them last night on another station, and it was quite a heated debate. So I think it's going to come down again to the organization. I think both of them are very organized persons, but of course I think Patricia has a lot of experience in there, so it would be what Pernell manages to do.
I think, though, one of the things that we have to look at is that by-election. In hindsight, I think that Patricia Duncan should have contested that by-election.
Yes.
Not contesting that by-election gave Pernell Charles Jr. enough time to settle in the constituency.
But it also didn't test her party machinery in the
That is
constituency,
correct.
their level
Yes.
of preparation, their readiness, and if there needed to be any adjustments leading into the
Correct.
general election. And so that untested machinery is
With
now
a
is what to,
top, yes, everybody,
of course.
get ready.
And also get people motivated.
Yes.
Seeing the kind of support that you're able to garner would get them now to continue supporting you. But two things were raised in that clip as well with Dwayne Anderson. One of them was voting times. There have been complaints across the country that some individuals are not able to vote in a timely manner, and the wait times have affected their willingness to stay in the lines. How significant should we consider that to be, Sanjay?
I think it's pretty significant, but again, it comes down to organization. Because if you have the runners who are there and you have the outdoor agents, they will, try to talk to the persons who are there, who are in the lines, to ensure that they stay. Whichever party can ensure that their individuals stay in the line and don't leave, that is the party that will win tonight. And this is one of the seats, as I mentioned, that organization is key when it comes to winning this constituency.
Jave, and the other thing that was mentioned was the lack of adherence to the COVID-19 protocols. The EOJ has put up several signs at polling stations indicating that they want you to physically distance, they want you to sanitize, they want you to wear masks. But Dwayne was indicating that some people in the constituency of Clarendon Southeastern weren't doing that as they went to polling stations. Is that a concern?
Yeah, definitely. I think that concerns a lot of people. It seems to be an issue mostly outside of the voting areas, though, because I know from my experience, for example, as soon as you went in, there was an EOJ officer telling you make sure you're social distance, asking you to dress back a little bit. So I think what's important, though, is that the parties need to have their workers and their runners following the rules, following it very strictly, and also encouraging supporters who are around them to do the right thing. And it's interesting too, what Sanjay said, because in my at my polling division station, there was a lady who seemingly was waiting for quite some time, and there was quite a little line, and she was very upset and saying from the sick come at Jamaica, she come out her house and all sort of something, and she got very, very irate and said she was going home, and she actually stood up and started to walk away. And same time, somebody clad in orange came out and spoke to her, gave her a little touch, and she went back and sat down, calmed down, and said, all right, I'm going to vote. So it's, as Sanjay said, the runners have to work. They have to make sure that they're helping the people stay in the line and vote.
That is going to make such a decision in all the constituencies, but especially the marginal ones. Another marginal one in that parish, though? North Central.
Yes.
Clarendon North Central is another hot constituency there. Where you went to school, but right now we have two candidates contesting, Dr. Desmond Brennan for the People's National Party and Robert Nestor Morgan from the Jamaica Labour Party. You're looking now at two candidates who want to put their hands on this constituency. Help me out, man from Clarendon. What do you think is likely to happen this evening as we look at that hot bed constituency?
Well, I think it's going to be tough. Brennan has been there for quite some time, and he's known by a number of people, loved, people. If you look at the polls have some good things where people are saying he does things for the constituents and stuff like that. So I think it's going to be very, very interesting. Robert is a born and bred person from the constituency. I think Brennan went there about 94, 98, if I remember correctly. The JLP, though, this is a strong JLP constituency. It has been for quite some time. I don't think they've ever voted PNP, but the PNP has been gaining grounds over the years, right? And we've heard lots of concerns about this organization in the seat and stuff like that. So I think whether or not Robert's 6 months or so in the constituency will help him, will tell us tonight, and how organized they are on the ground today. I think the PNP, though, only has one strong part in that constituency, and if I remember correctly, the Chapaton division, where I think Brennan's office is perhaps located. So it's going to be very, very interesting. It's a huge constituency, lots of poverty, lots of underdevelopment,
yes.
Lots and lots of needs. I mean, I have family from the constituency as well. I went to school at Clarendon College, and I have lots of family in Moko, and I know that area has just been depraved of development for a number of years.
Well, before you tell me, Sanjay, your thoughts on that constituency, we want to go to the Electoral Office of Jamaica. Vashon Brown is there with an update for us. Hi, Vashon.
Thank you so much, Jody. Now, before today, analysts had been predicting a low voter turnout, especially in light of the coronavirus pandemic, and with forecasters predicting rainfall. Now, as at 11 a.m., 16% of eligible electors voted at polling stations across the island. Just to remind you that there are over 1.9 million people registered to vote in this election. Now, also for added context, in the 2016 general election, right around 11 a.m. as well, there was also a 16% turnout, 16.96% to be exact. Now, the polls close at 5 p.m. and we are expected to get another update on turnout sometime after 3 p.m. and we will give you that information when we get it. Hopefully by that time as well, we can give you some constituency breakdowns in terms of the constituency that we are seeing a higher turnout than in others. At the end of the 2016 general election, when all the figures were calculated, turnout stood at roughly 48%. That was, of course, the lowest ever recorded, except for in 1983 election, which was not contested by the People's National Party. So again, we will give you those 3 p.m. numbers when we get them right here at the Election Center. Jody, it's back to you.
Much for that, Vashon. Vashon there giving us a report from the EOJ. 16%, we talked about it earlier, Sanjay, but what will it mean for a constituency like Clarendon Southeast or Clarendon North Central to have a higher or lower voter turnout, especially as these are big battleground seats?
You see, it's a little difficult sometimes when you're looking and talking about COVID time now. It's a little difficult analyzing the constituencies and the voter turnout. I think, though, the low voter turnout in the battleground constituencies will support the incumbent. That's my thought.
So the Jamaica Labour Party gets a benefit if less people come out.
Correct. But we have seen, and when you analyze the data, you see in the past, high voter turnout sometimes support the incumbent or the person challenging. But for the most part, when you look at the data, it do support the incumbent party.
Mati Samuda, the head of public relations in the Jamaica Labour Party, indicated that Jamaicans go out to vote out parties, but they don't go to vote them in or to keep them in. And low voter turnout, therefore, he explained, is a sign that Jamaicans are okay with the way things are running. Does that feel accurate to you, Javier Nelson?
Yeah, I think that's what a lot of us feel. It's okay. They're going to win anyway. Things are difficult right now with COVID and stuff, so we're not going to go out and cast a vote and risk it. But interestingly, I got up this morning. I was just thinking about how excited a lot of people, young people especially, I know, are about going out today and vote, and that today is election day. And it gives me a kind of feeling of how things were in 2007 when there were so many young people who were just excited about the election and going out to cast their vote and stuff. But what seems to happen this time is that time a number of those young people were saying, Jamaica needs a change now. But now a lot of the young people seemingly are saying we need a steady hand, we need to keep things as they are. So perhaps Mathis Amuda is quite right that people are comfortable with how things are.
Sanjay, the influence of polls is something that we have to discuss, because we've had several polls come out in the last few months indicating a lead for the Jamaica Labour Party. Some people feel that it's almost a foregone conclusion that they will win. Will that be something that you think motivates voters to go out to vote for the JLP, thinking that they're the winning side? Or do you think that People's National Party voters will decide that, listen, I can change those voting figures on the day that matters, on election day?
I think polling sometimes can be very influential, and you'll recognize that the parties sometimes, depending on who is in the lead, will downplay or will say, well, we're watching the poll, we're happy to see we're in the lead, but we're not comfortable. So whichever party that is in the lead will say that, but whichever is not. And you'll recognize even the People's National Party, they released their internal polls, and when I thought about it, I said to myself, it seems to me it was a strategy to energize their base, who probably would have felt there is no need to go out to vote because the JLP clearly is in the lead when you look at all the polls that we're seeing.
Well, we're going to now go to our reporter Jermaine Brown in Southeast St. Elizabeth to give us an update in that constituency.
The B.B. Cook High School in the constituency of Southeast St. Elizabeth. Of course, the sitting MP is Frank Witter, and he's been challenged by Dr. Dwayne Spencer. Well, so far we've been in the constituency for over 2 hours now, and we at the B.B. Cook High School, for instance, we have observed some long lines. We have heard complaints about the long lines, and this is owed mainly due to the restrictions brought on by the COVID-19 pandemic. So voters are being repeatedly being asked to social distance. Of course, most of them that I have observed are wearing their masks. We caught up with Frank Witter a bit earlier, and he sounded quite confident of retaining the seat.
Well, I took it over in 1997. I ran my first parliamentary election. At that time, I lost by over 2,000 votes. I've been making improvements since then, and I've been able to win the seat 2 times. And I'm very, very confident now that it has changed now from a strong PMP seat to a marginal seat, and now it is a strong JLP seat.
He says that he's expecting to win by some 1,000 votes. I did ask him about the voter turnout. Of course, in this constituency, there are 4 divisions. We're talking about Junction, Southfield, Myersville, of course, which is the largest of the 4 constituencies. And there's, of course, Malvern also. Some over 30,000 persons have been registered to vote in this constituency. Did catch up also with Dr. Dwayne Spencer, who is more quietly confident. He's the younger brother of Colonel Spencer, a former PNP MP as well for Northeast St. Elizabeth. He'll be hoping to regain a seat which was once a dominant PNP seat. B.B. Cook, of course, for whom this high school is named after, from the PNP side, he won the first 3 elections. There's also Derek Rochester, who won a total of 5 times in this constituency as well. So it is the last 3 elections have been shared between the 2 parties, and as such, this seat is now considered a marginal seat. However, Frank Witter, confident, we've seen its supporters out in the numbers as well. We've seen pockets of PNP supporters. So for the time being, it remains advantage Frank Witter. I am Jermaine Brown reporting live from the B.B. Cook High School in Southeast St. Elizabeth.
Thanks so much, Jermaine, for giving us that report from Southeast St. Elizabeth. We're going to take a break here in Decision 2020, your afternoon edition, looking at what Jamaica will decide this evening as to who should form the next government. Stay with us.
2020, the year of the most twists and turns, and we've got you covered. Decision 2020, COVID-style coverage. From the opening of the polls across Jamaica, our teams will bring you ballot-by-ballot coverage. We'll give you the latest voters count, spiced with our experienced analysts. Which party will form the next government? TVJ's Decision 2020, we've got you covered.
It's the big one.
We are going to create the new Jamaica.
This team is ready to rescue Jamaica.
2020, the year of the most twists and turns, and we've got you covered. Decision 2020, COVID-style coverage. From the opening of the polls across Jamaica, our teams will bring you ballot-by-ballot coverage. We'll give you the latest voters count, spiced with our experienced analysts. Which party will form the next government? TVJ's Decision 2020, we've got you covered.
Reduce your risk of viral illnesses like the flu and coronavirus. Wash your hands frequently with soap and water. Cover your nose and mouth when coughing with a tissue and dispose of it. Avoid close contact with anyone with a cold or flu-like symptoms. If you become ill, please visit your doctor or the nearest health center and share your travel history. The flu and coronavirus can kill. Let's protect each other. A message from the Ministry of Health and Wellness.
It's the big one.
We are going to create the new Jamaica.
This team is ready to rescue Jamaica.
The date is set.
The general elections for the year 2020 is therefore Thursday, September the 3rd, 2020.
Even with the COVID-19 pandemic, TVJ News has every beat covered. Join us for Decision 2020.
This team is ready to rescue Jamaica.
We are going to create the new Jamaica.
Decision 2020, comprehensive election coverage. Weeknights in primetime news and our special election program. TVJ News, keeping you informed.
"2020, the year of the most twists and turns, and we've got you covered."
Thanks so much for staying with us inside Decision 2020. Jamaica votes to decide who will form the next government. I'm Jody Ann Quarry, and with me I have Sanjay Lewis and Javier Nelson. And on the screen we just saw who persons thought would win if there was low voter turnout. You both have indicated that you think low voter turnout may just benefit the current government. Well, that position taken, we move now to the constituencies, because you just heard a roundup from Jermaine Brown in St. Elizabeth Southeastern, where Franklin Witter, sitting member of parliament, long-time sitting member of parliament, is going against new challenger Dr. Dwayne Spencer. What are your thoughts on that constituency, Sanjay?
Well, that constituency comes down to organization. The last time Frank Witter won that seat by 205 votes, he will have to ensure that he's very organized. Based on what I'm hearing on the ground, he is. I'm not expecting him to lose that seat, just looking on the history of it. He lost that seat, I think it was the last 2 elections ago. But I think for this one, based on the organization that I'm hearing on the ground, Frank Witter will hold on. I'm not so sure. He mentioned 1,000 odd votes. I'm not so sure he will get 1,000
The margin is what your question,
right.
not necessarily
I
that he will
question the
win.
margin, but I think he will win.
All right. Javion, your thoughts?
Well, COVID is 2020 has been full of surprises, so you never know. But yeah, I don't think it will be so many votes. This is an interesting seat again. I think I agree with Sanjay. I think Frank Witter will take it home for the JLP. I have a little thing here with some projections from about 5 people, and of the 5 people, 2 people say for the JLP, right? 2 says toss up and 1 says lean for the JLP. So I think Frank will definitely take it. I think JLP is in people like the JLP, people like Frank Witter. He's very organized. He manages to do things. Dwayne is also loved down there, but again, organization, how you've performed. And I think there's something that a lot of the older candidates have over a number of the younger candidates, and that is the organization and the way in which the rapport they have with the people in the constituency.
Well, you're talking about an older candidate in St. Elizabeth Southeastern in Frank Witter, but young candidate next door, Floyd Green, there in St. Elizabeth Southwestern. He's going against Ewan Stevenson in that constituency. Younger member of the Jamaica Labour Party, but some would say as organized as an older journeyman like you see here in Franklin Witter. Your thoughts on that constituency, Sanjay?
That constituency for a long time was considered a weather vane constituency because it votes with whomever wins the general election. I'm not looking on with Floyd Green, Ewan Stevenson. Based on what I'm hearing on the ground, Floyd has been doing some good work down there. He's organized also. So I know Javion mentioned the younger set of politicians
not being as organized, yes.
But
sometimes.
But Floyd Green is one of the younger parliamentarian that is organized, and I'm expecting him to win tonight.
Javion?
Yeah, I think Floyd will definitely take it home. The other day somebody from his constituency messaged and say they have to go out and vote for Floyd because he's been doing some good work and he's been showing up at some interesting places. So I think Floyd will definitely take it home for the JLP.
I move you now to the western side of the island because there's a hot seat over there in St.
James
Southern. Very hot, very hot. You have sub-hot, but there's a different kind of hot going on there in St. James Southern, where you have Dr. Walton Small going against the mayor of Montego Bay, now hoping to become Member of Parliament, Homer Davis. Is this a seat to watch, Javion?
I definitely think it is a seat to watch. I think a lot of people were thinking that it'll be very easy for Homer to take it home, but I've been hearing that Walton Small has been doing some good work. He's one of those people who has the fortune of having been named for the constituency for quite some time, so I think that also helps him quite a lot.
In the discussion about being named for the constituency, is time in the constituency something that you're noticing affecting many of the candidates, that they had insufficient time to plant roots in the constituency and therefore to showcase what they could have brought in this general election?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, as a countryman, if it's one thing I think people in rural Jamaica and even in more developed places like St. James want is to know that they know their MPs. And even if you look at the polling numbers for, I think, North Central Clarendon, you saw that was something that actually came up where people were saying, I don't know him, or he's been there for 6 months, not enough time. So I think, we have to get to the stage where we're naming MPs and caretakers much earlier so that they have time to work in the seats, because you can't just toss somebody in at the last minute and expect that they'll be able to take it home.
Homer Davis was not tossed in. Walton Small was not tossed in, Sanjay. They're both there. And Homer Davis as mayor would believe that he has a reputation in the parish that he'd be able to depend on. Dr. Walton Small is going down there giving him trouble. What do you look for when you're looking at that constituency?
Well, Dr. Walton Small, they call him the teacher. And that gentleman is one to watch. Homer Davis have a bigger profile because he's the mayor down there in Montego Bay. But the two divisions that I'm watching the Cambridge division, of which he is now the councillor, that's Homer Davis, and the Katadupa division of the People's National Party. They have to perform well in the Katadupa division, and likewise, Homer Davis must perform well in the Cambridge division. Those are the two divisions for me that I'm looking at. We'll recognize that the People's National Party is defending a little bit over 60 votes in the last general election. It's going to come right down to the wire. And again, organization, I can't stress that anymore, getting out the votes, getting out the key votes in the division that really matters.
We're looking at constituencies where not even mere hundreds, but mere tens separate candidates. How important is it for a political party to look at a seat like this one and say, I need to go all out to impress the people? Because 69 is not a very stable foundation in order to run a constituency, Javian.
I mean, it's one simple thing. You have to get everybody out, right? And you can't just wait until election day. Again, it's about the organization. And, you know, coming from a family where people used to do that kind of thing, I know you have to start very, very early. You have to comb the voters list every day, know who your voters are, you canvass, you encourage them, you make sure they get the polling cards and they know their polling divisions. And you have to have the people on the day checking and running and getting the people, because if you can't do that, then you're not going to know. Because I think parties easily well know how they're performing on the day, because you're quite likely know a lot of the people, right? And so the indoor agent is there, supposed to be checking off and to be saying to you outside, boy, you need to go get some people because we're running in problems right now.
You may be running in problems in St. James, but I also think problems may exist in St. Anne Northwestern. Dayton Campbell versus Crystal Lee, and a third-party candidate that may make a difference. Look, tell me, what do you assess as Dr. Dayton Campbell's chances down there in St. Anne Northwestern, Javian?
I think Dayton is a fighter, right? He's a man of the soil. I think he's somebody who is very passionate about helping the people in his constituency, somebody who has worked hard, but seemingly one of those people who just always have to fight to make sure so they make it in. I think he might quite likely cross the finish line, but I think it's going to be very, very difficult for him. It's a tough seat. I think the PNP, the independent candidate rather, has been there for some time. The person is, he's well known as well, and I think the JLP did a lot of work over the years as well, targeting that seat. But I think he'll push through.
I come to you, Sanjay, because Mr. Shan, formerly of the People's National Party, has now become an independent candidate in that constituency, saying that he thought there was not sufficient representation provided by Dr. Dayton Campbell. You now have these three people running in this constituency, and potentially for the first time an independent candidate taking it. What are your thoughts on this seat?
I think we may tonight get a shocker from this constituency. Peter Shan may be the spoke in the wheel that may cause Dayton Campbell to lose that seat. Dayton Campbell, of course, a good member of parliament, but I think he has to do well in the Brownstown division to ensure that he maintains that constituency. But as I mentioned before, it's not so much Crystal Lee in my mind, it's more Peter Shan. And if Peter Shan takes away some of Dayton's votes, then we may possibly see Crystal Lee winning. Because remember, in the last election, Dayton won that constituency by just over 400 votes.
Under 500 votes, winning that constituency, now having a challenger come in who was part of his party machinery, was asked by his party allegedly not to run in this constituency because he could split the votes. Does Dayton Campbell have 400 votes to lose at this point in time, Sanjay?
Can't lose anything, as a matter of fact. Cannot. And remember also, in the last local government election, he lost all the divisions. So that also, the JLP has the councillors, they would have the councillors working for them. So Dayton, it's an uphill battle for him, but as Javian mentioned, he's a fighter. So I'm not necessarily calling that seat just yet, but I'm watching this one, and I'm looking also at Peter Shan to see how many votes he can get, because certainly I think he'll get a lot of the PNP's votes.
Talk to me about the halo effect. We haven't focused very much on party leaders, but persons in constituencies, especially marginal constituencies like these, can decide not just who it is that is their member of parliament, but they can look large and say, say who they want to be leader of their country. When you have Dr. Peter Phillips on the side of the People's National Party and Andrew Holness on the side of the Jamaica Labour Party, do you think that sort of thing makes a difference in a constituency like this one, Javion?
Yeah, I think, the party leader does help in constituencies, especially those marginal constituencies. There are some people who want to vote for the leader of the party. There are some who are voting squarely on the fact that this is my MP and the MP has done good work or done bad work and I'm going to vote him out. So definitely I think someone like Dayton, but the challenge is we see where the PNP's party leader is not as favorable in a number of seats right across the country. So whether or not Dr. Peter Phillips could help Dayton cross the finish line is the question. I think it's going to be difficult for him. I don't think we've seen where Dr. Phillips has been used in a lot of the seats or in a lot of the campaign nationally. So I don't think someone like Dayton is banking on that. I think he's perhaps banking on some of the more popular PNP people who might have gone there to support him. So maybe like a Peter Bunting. I don't know if Lisa Hanna was able to go down there, but I think that's what's going to help him. But again, if Peter Shan is able to amass a significant number of votes, it might just be difficult for him. But I know at least one comrade who says he's going down there to fight and help Dayton.
Well, you know what? That's going to be important. Each vote will count in a constituency like this. A constituency as well, like St. Anne Southwestern, is going to be one where every vote will count. We're going to, though, take a break here inside our afternoon coverage of Decision 2020, where Jamaica decides who will form the next government. Stay with us here on Television Jamaica.
2020, the year of the most twists and turns, and we've got you covered. Decision 2020 COVID-style coverage. From the opening of the polls across Jamaica, our teams will bring you ballot-by-ballot coverage. We'll give you the latest voters count, spiced with our experienced analysts. Which party will form the next government? TVJ's Decision 2020, we've got you covered.
It's the big one.
We are going to create the new Jamaica.
This team is ready to rescue Jamaica.
2020, the year of the most twists and turns, and we've got you covered. Decision 2020 COVID-style coverage. From the opening of the polls across Jamaica, our teams will bring you ballot-by-ballot coverage. We'll give you the latest voters count, spiced with our experienced analysts. Which party will form the next government? TVJ's Decision 2020, we've got you covered.
Reduce your risk of viral illnesses like the flu and coronavirus. Wash your hands frequently with soap and water. Cover your nose and mouth when coughing with a tissue and dispose of it. Avoid close contact with anyone with a cold or flu-like symptoms. If you become ill, please visit your doctor or the nearest health center and share your travel history. The flu and coronavirus can kill. Let's protect each other. A message from the Ministry of Health and Wellness.
It's the big one.
We are going to create the new Jamaica.
This team is ready to rescue Jamaica.
The date is set.
The general elections for the year 2020 is therefore Thursday, September the 3rd, 2020.
Even with the COVID-19 pandemic, TVJ News has every beat covered. Join us for Decision 2020.
This team is ready to rescue Jamaica.
We are going to create the new Jamaica.
Decision 2020. Comprehensive election coverage. Weeknights in primetime news and our special election program. TVJ News, keeping you informed.
2020, the year of the most twists and turns, and we've got you covered. Decision 2020 COVID-style coverage. From the opening of the polls across Jamaica, our teams will bring you ballot-by-ballot coverage. We'll give you the latest voters count, spiced with our experienced analysts. Which party will form the next government? TVJ's Decision 2020, we've got you covered.
It's the big one.
We are going to create the new Jamaica.
This team is ready to rescue Jamaica.
2020, the year of the most twists and turns, and we've got you covered. Decision 2020 COVID-style coverage. From the opening of the polls across Jamaica, our teams will bring you ballot-by-ballot coverage. We'll give you the latest voters count, spiced with our experienced analysts. Which party will form the next government? TVJ's Decision 2020, we've got you covered.
Reduce your risk of viral illnesses like the flu and coronavirus. Wash your hands frequently with soap and water. Cover your nose and mouth when coughing with a tissue and dispose of it. Avoid close contact with anyone with a cold or flu-like symptoms. If you become ill, please visit your doctor or the nearest health center and share your travel history. The flu and coronavirus can kill. Let's protect each other. A message from the Ministry of Health and Wellness.
It's the big one.
Thanks so much for staying with us in your afternoon edition of Decision 2020, where we look at what Jamaica will decide this evening when they choose who will form the next government. I'm Jody Ann Quarry, and with me I have Sanjay Lewis and Javian Nelson. Inside studios, we'll be taking a look at constituencies that may make a difference this evening. We're going to go now to one such constituency and join Jordan Fort on the line with us in St. James Central. Hi, Jordan.
Hi, Jordan. I can tell you that, I've been journeying around the constituency. In fact, I've been spanning two constituencies, St. James Central and St. James West Central. When I did make the trek up to the Sir Howard Cook Educational Complex, that falls within the constituency of St. James Central, where Hugh Clark, the JLP, the candidate, is the incumbent, and he's going up against Andre Hilton of the People's National Party. I did speak to both candidates. The incumbent, Hugh Clark, did express, a lot of confidence and seemed unperturbed by some of the complaints and some of the variables that when I asked him about that may influence the outcome later this evening.
Is it there any
the protocols that have been put in place and have to be observed, and because of that you find that the turnover time for one person to vote takes a little bit longer than normal.
You won this seat by a fairly comfortable margin the last time, but you're going up now against an experienced political representative, though he's not experienced in this particular constituency. Has that given you any pause? Has that given you any reason for concern?
The experience that you speak about is in your opinion, because I still want to know why is it that he won the seat in St. Andrew, lost the seat, and was kicked out of the seat and ended up in Montego in St. James. So I don't think that is experience right here.
Jordan, are you with us?
I'm still here. So that is where the incumbent Hugh Clark placed his vote at approximately 12:35 this afternoon, and I did, notice and observe the protocols or the COVID-19 prevention protocols they tried to observe them and enforce them as much as possible. Temperature checks were being done, and there was sanitization before entering the premises where the polling station was. They did have issues, I think, as many other constituencies had, in terms of enforcing the protocol of social distancing, because once persons got outside of the boundaries, so to speak, of this particular polling station, they tended to gather on the outside, and the usual bantering and so on that takes place during a general election was taking place among party supporters. I also, before that, I went to the Mount Salem Primary and Junior High School. In fact, it was the Portobello Community Center, which is also in the constituency of St. James Central, where the challenger, the PNP's Andre Hilton, placed his vote. Also had a quick word with him after he voted.
I have done the work. I have been in the constituency for over 2 years. Well, I've returned to the constituency for over 2 years, and I've been working with the people. And I believe the people have logged on to what I've been sharing with them and the vision that I've been expressing. And I believe they're going to vote for a change. I also believe that they have not been well served in this constituency, and the standard of representation is hopefully lacking. And I think they want more. Voting turnout has been pleasing, and I believe if it continues that way, we will be celebrating.
Thanks so much.
So that was the PNP's candidate, Andre Hilton, speaking there to me after placing his vote. Things were pretty quiet up by that polling center when I got there just after 11 this morning. And things are also quiet when I went to the Sir Howard Cook Educational Complex where the incumbent Hugh Clark placed his vote. I think nothing as contentious as it seemed in the constituency of St. James West Central, where the incumbent GLP's Marlene Malahou-Fort is going up against the challenger from the People's National Party, Dr. Andre Hort.
Jordan Fort.
So that's basically the picture from that constituency, Julian.
Jordan, explain to me what you mean by contentious. This is a hotbed seat, certainly, but what has been happening in that constituency?
Well, I spoke to both, Dr. Horton and Marlene Malahou-Fort. When I spoke to Mrs. Malahou-Fort first, she was expressing some amount of concern that some voters seem to have lost patience with the lengthy waiting time that was occurring because of the COVID-19 protocol enforcement. And in fact, I did overhear one lady say that she couldn't bother to wait any longer. Mrs. Malahou-Fort did have quite a forlorn look on her face. So my assumption would be that that would be one of her supporters. And it's still unclear whether that person would actually return later on to place their vote, given the fact that COVID-19 positive people would be allowed to vote between 4 and 5. So that's still up in the air there. I did speak to Andre Horton, and he pointed to the fact that maybe some gamesmanship was taking place. He said he saw instances or got reports of intimidation, that he didn't want to commit to who in particular was behind that intimidation, but he did hazard a guess that it was members of the party of his opponent. So not going to go too far with that one because we have no verification of that. But he also doubled down on a statement he made recently, a controversial statement about the polls, and saying that the pollsters weren't necessarily properly equipped to carry out these polls after the polls showed him with a significant deficit in the constituency. And he stood by that statement when I asked him about it, wasn't willing to retract it, and he is still confident that by the end of the day today, he will be proven right that the polls were not right.
Jordan Fort, help me with party organization. Have you been able to see in either St. James West Central or Central a clear sense that the parties have seen the importance of getting their people out and so have organized to do so?
Yes, they look like, based on what I could have seen, you saw the general buses and other taxi-operated vehicles, driving up to the polling stations and letting people out. And you could hear, persons wearing the colors of both parties, encouraging other persons to come in and vote. People were making calls in terms of, where people were to try to get them out to vote. So I heard that going on. And it seemed as if an effort was being made. It didn't seem to me at the time, Jody, and that anybody was too concerned that persons who said they would come out to vote did not come out to vote at that time. Not sure if anything would have changed since then. But it did seem like the regular election day process was taking place. We've had fair weather. It was rainy coming in to St. James from Kingston. St. Anne and Trelawney had a lot of rain. Not so in St. James, at least not the constituencies I've been to. And so it seems as if the people have not necessarily been deterred in terms of turning out to vote.
Jordan Fort, thanks so much for giving us that report as you straddle two constituencies, St. James West Central and St. James Central. That was Jordan Fort talking to us about what's going on there. First constituency, he mentioned St. James Central, Andre Hilton and Heroy Clark. And we saw clips from both men speaking. In this constituency where Heroy Clark is saying, listen, Andre Hilton, you lost by 161 votes to favor Williams in St. Andrew Eastern. You've moved over to this side. Why didn't you stay down there? Is that, you think, a convincing line for voters, Sanjay?
Well, look at it this way. I think Heroy Clark knows what he's talking about. The organization in that constituency, I think, is solid. Heroy Clark is an organizer, but don't for a second put aside Andre Hilton, because Andre Hilton also knows the politics. What you have to look at, though, with that constituency, and it's one of the newer constituencies, Heroy Clark would have lost that constituency to Lloyd B. Smith in 2011 by 98 votes. I think Heroy learned his lesson because in the 2016 election, he won by 1,889 votes.
Eliminating that small margin win.
Exactly.
Yes.
So when you look at the organization down there, I'd be surprised if Heroy actually loses that constituency.
But we're looking now at a different kind of challenger in Andre Hilton, Javian. Is that something that may change the stakes?
Well, I think that seat is an interesting one, but I think the Marley Malahoo will put up a fight. I think I've heard lots of good...
No, that's the other seat. That's St. James West
sorry,
Central. We're talking about St. James Central.
Sorry, yes.
Heroy Clark, Andre Hilton.
Yes, sorry, I heard Horton. I definitely think I agree with Sanjay. I think Heroy is an organizer. I think he will pull through. I don't think he has that much to worry about at the moment. But definitely I think Andre Hilton is a hard worker as well. He's been there for some time, and you hear him saying, I've been here for 2 years, coming back to the people, somewhere he knows and somewhere he's been working for quite some time, which I think really helps for people.
We're going to take a break here inside Decision 2020 as we continue to give you live and continuing coverage here on TVJ. Stay with us.
"2020, the year of the most twists and turns, and we've got you covered. Decision 2020 COVID-style coverage. From the opening of the polls across Jamaica, our teams will bring you ballot-by-ballot coverage. We'll give you the latest voters count, spiced with our experienced analysts. Which party will form the next government? TVJ's Decision 2020, we've got you covered.
It's the big one.
"2020, the year of the most twists and turns, and we've got you covered. Decision 2020 COVID-style coverage. From the opening of the polls across Jamaica, our teams will bring you ballot-by-ballot coverage. We'll give you the latest voters count, spiced with our experienced analysts. Which party will form the next government? TVJ's Decision 2020, we've got you covered.
It's the big one.
We are going to create the new Jamaica.
This team is ready to rescue Jamaica.
2020, the year of the most twists and turns, and we've got you covered. Decision 2020 COVID-style coverage. From the opening of the polls across Jamaica, our teams will bring you ballot-by-ballot coverage. We'll give you the latest voters count, spiced with our experienced analysts. Which party will form the next government? TVJ's Decision 2020, we've got you covered.
your risk of viral illnesses like the flu and coronavirus. Wash your hands frequently with soap and water. Cover your nose and mouth when coughing with a tissue and dispose of it. Avoid close contact with anyone with a cold or flu-like symptoms. If you become ill, please visit your doctor or the nearest health center and share your travel history. The flu and coronavirus can kill. Let's protect each other. A message from the Ministry of Health and Wellness.
It's the big one.
We are going to create the new Jamaica.
This team is ready to rescue Jamaica.
The date is set.
The general elections for the year 2020 is therefore Thursday, September the 3rd, 2020.
Even with the COVID-19 pandemic, TVJ News has every beat covered. Join us for Decision 2020.
This team is ready to rescue Jamaica.
We are going to create the new Jamaica.
Decision 2020. Comprehensive election coverage. Weeknights in primetime news and our special election program. TVJ News, keeping you informed.
2020, the year of the most twists and turns, and we've got you covered. Decision 2020 COVID-style coverage. From the opening of the polls across Jamaica, our teams will bring you ballot-by-ballot coverage. We'll give you the latest voters count, spiced with our experienced analysts. Which party will form the next government? TVJ's Decision 2020, we've got you covered.
It's the big one.
We are going to create the new Jamaica.
This team is ready to rescue Jamaica.
2020, the year of the most twists and turns, and we've got you covered. Decision 2020 COVID-style coverage. From the opening of the polls across Jamaica, our teams will bring you ballot-by-ballot coverage. We'll give you the latest voters count, spiced with our experienced analysts. Which party will form the next government? TVJ's Decision 2020, we've got you covered.
Reduce your risk of viral illnesses like the flu and coronavirus. Wash your hands frequently with soap and water. Cover your nose and mouth when coughing with a tissue and dispose of it. Avoid close contact with anyone with a cold or flu-like symptoms. If you become ill, please visit your doctor or the nearest health center and share your travel history. The flu and coronavirus can kill. Let's protect each other. A message from the Ministry of Health and Wellness.
It's the big one.
We are going to create the new Jamaica.
This team is ready to rescue Jamaica.
The date is set.
The general elections for the year 2020 is therefore Thursday, September the 3rd, 2020.
Even with the COVID-19 pandemic, TVJ News has every beat covered. Join us for Decision 2020.
This team is ready.
Thanks so much for staying with us inside Decision 2020 here on TVJ. We guide you through the decision that Jamaica will make today, who they vote for to form the next government. I have here with me Sanjay Lewis and Javian Nelson to discuss what's going on. But before I hear from them, we're going to hear live commentary from what's going on out on the streets. And we're joined by Giovanni Dennis there in St. Anne. Hi, Giovanni. Welcome back.
We're now in southwest St. Anne, a town called Alexandria to be specific. Behind me, as you can see, the PNP constituency office to my left, and beside it is the Alexandria post office. Now, just in front of that is the JLP election day workers under that tent right there, and they're all next to the Charlton Primary School, which is a polling station right here where persons are voting. Now, you probably can't see, but there's a police officer on the inside sitting where he is now having his lunch. Of course, the security forces have been working. They have been doing some crowd control, ensuring that only the set amount of persons can go in one at a time. The checks are being done, and several persons have been making their way inside and outside of the polling station. Now, I spoke to the incumbent Xavier May. Now, he won in 2016 by 337 votes. It's a very, very close seat. However, he was confident of his performance.
Well, I think the people of this constituency are impressed with the effort and the results that they have seen over the last 4.5 years. The fact of the matter is that, having elected me as a member of parliament, the people were saying to me that, listen, we rejected the last person because we were not satisfied as to the nature and the quality of his work. They are saying to me that, listen, perform and we will be with you. I have performed, and what you see today is just an indication of the satisfaction of the people, of the work and the effort that I would have brought to the table.
However, some PNP supporters we spoke with were very critical of the JLP Member of Parliament.
Well, Mr. Wynne seems as a person who have a vision and to make the place great again, which is that people think about what they want today, but not for the future. And we think about creating future plans, future goals for this generation. If we don't try something new, nothing will be in balance, because it's going to be the same old Jamaica again.
For a bit more context, in the southwest St. Anne seat in 2011, the PNP's Keith Walford won this seat, and he won by a margin of victory of under 1,000 votes. Specifically, he won by 822 votes. Now, this seat swung to the JLP in 2016 when Xavier May won by a mere 337 votes. So this seat is still a marginal seat in this area. A bike man moving by there. I was a little bit distracted, but persons are moving about and speaking, so you will hear a lot of noise in the background. But the point I was making is that this seat is one of those marginal seats for the very reason that less than 1,000 votes in 2011 was the margin of victory for the winner, and less than 500 votes was the margin of victory in 2016 for Xavier May. So we are here, we are monitoring proceedings, and we'll give you the latest in primetime news.
We just heard that report from Giovanni Dennis there in St. Anne Southwest, where we have Valentine Wint contesting that seat against Xavier Main. What do we feel about that seat, gentlemen? Starting with you, Sanjay.
Well, Valentine Wint is no stranger to the politics. He would have challenged Audley Shaw over in Manchester North East. And he moved over to challenge Xavier Main now. Again, it's all about organization. There are some key divisions. The JLP performs pretty well in the Gibraltar division and also the Alexandria division and the People's National Party, the Berber Bridge division especially. So I think, again, it comes down to organization. You'd recognize 337 votes for the Jamaica Labour Party in the last election. A very slim margin once again. Exactly. But I gather, based on what I'm hearing, that Xavier Main is trying his best to increase his margin there. But if the PNP is organized in that constituency, we could see, and we could look at that one, and we may see a swing, but I'm thinking, based on what I'm seeing here, and based on the statistics, it seems like it may stay with the JLP.
Xavier Main may keep that constituency, Javion, but these narrow margins continue to haunt parties. Is a victory of less than 337 an indication that the people are no longer with him, even if he wins that constituency?
Not necessarily, and I think it's perhaps an indication of how better we are getting at democracy. I think it's better to me that we don't have all these safe seats where people have lots and lots of big margins. I think it's better when you know you're going to have to fight, because at least at the end of the day, who will more than likely win is the people of Jamaica.
And certainly get the representation that they need.
Absolutely.
Two constituencies to watch, though, in St. Catherine are what we're going to move to next, because we have Kalisha Williams there with a report. Hi, Kalisha. We're waiting to hear from Kalisha Wint there.
Right now, I'm just
polling station at the Gregory Park Primary School in East Central St. Catherine, where the PNP's Raymond Price is going up against the incumbent Orlando Terrelong for the seat. Right now, the voting process has slowed down. Earlier this morning, there was a long line along Cottage Drive. That's right across from the Unipet gas station for those of you who know Gregory Park. But you may be wondering why there are persons still gathered behind me. That's because the voters, who some of whom have voted from morning, they are lingering here, they're drinking, some persons are smoking, seem to be having the time of their lives. What I can tell you too is that while most persons are wearing masks, physical distancing, as you can see, is through the window. Just for some background about this constituency is that it was created in 2011 and it is actually the first seat the JLP has won in this constituency, in this municipality rather, in over 35 years. The Jamaica Labour Party, Orlando Terrelong being the first member of parliament for the constituency for the JLP, defeating the PNP's Arnaldo Brown by just over 490 votes in 2016. Where I'm at too in Gregory Park is very important for both political parties. It's actually the only seat the PNP lost in the only area in the constituency the PNP lost in the 2016 election, and it is the seat where the JLP received the most votes. So it's definitely one to watch come this evening. So I'll continue monitoring the situation here on the ground and provide further updates as the evening progresses. It's back to you in studio.
Thanks so much, Kalisha Williams, there in St. Catherine, East Central, giving us an update as to what's going on the ground there. So let's turn to the parish of St. Catherine, gentlemen. Two hot seats up for grabs. East Central and Southeastern St. Catherine. Two seats that may make the difference as we count votes later tonight. Start off first with East Central, since we were just discussing it. Orlando Terrelong, now sitting member of parliament, he's going up against Raymond Price, new entrant into that space. How do you assess their chances, especially since you just spoke to both candidates earlier this week?
Well, look at it this way. Raymond Price is not new to the politics. He would have been in the parliament before. He's new to the constituency. The People's National Party, when you look back at the history of, and it's a new constituency, they would have won initially with Arnaldo Brown against Camille Buchanan. Now, I think Raymond is a little late in the constituency, but he's doing good work in terms of getting persons to know about what he's doing. Orlando Terrelong also, when you speak to individuals on the ground, they will inform you that he has done work in the constituency. It comes down again to organization. The Jamaica Labour Party is strong in the Gregory Park division, so they have to ensure that they maximize the votes that they have in the Gregory Park division. The People's National Party, they are strong in Portmore Pines. So Portmore Pines, the PNP have to get out all their votes. Gregory Park division, JLP have to get out all their votes. And then Southborough division, that's where you're going to find a fight.
Southborough division, Portmore Pines division, initially part of the PNP stronghold before this constituency was created. How important is it for the Jamaica Labour Party to hold on to this seat and fend off the challenge of Raymond Price?
Well, I think this is one of the seats that they're definitely trying to keep. And I agree with Sanjay. I think when you listen to people praise the incumbent MP for the kind of work that he has done. But I think Raymond, I recall listening to an interview, and he actually said that this is a seat that he's worked in before. So even though he's a late entrant as the MP caretaker, I think he's worked there with Arnaldo Brown before in the constituency organization. So again, organization, who can outperform who. The JLP was really, really strong in Gregory Park, as Sanjay say. PNP is strong in Portmore Pines, but the margin is not as great as how JLP performed in Gregory Park.
Yes.
So they're going to have to perform stronger in Portmore Pines and see if they can improve in the other areas, so like Southborough, where it was almost kind of neck and neck.
Two constituencies to watch. One of them St. Catherine East Central, the other St. Catherine South Eastern. We had an ability to speak to the two candidates in that constituency. The first, Colin Fagan, telling us his thoughts on today's election results.
Well, we are very organized, I have done the work in the constituency. I've been member of parliament since 2007, and of those 2 terms I was in the opposition twice. And I think that the people are pleased with what they would have seen based on the resources that would be available to me during those periods. And so they are willing to return me as their member of parliament. They are anxious. And from the numbers you see coming out with respect to the seniors and so on, it is clear to me that I will have a good victory later.
He feels he'll have a good victory later, but he's going against a challenger in that constituency from the Jamaica Labour Party, Robert Miller, nicknamed Big Rob, and he's hoping to switch it into the camp of the Jamaica Labour Party. Let's hear from him.
Confident I've done the work. You know, I've identified my supporters, I've identified the undecided, and I've identified a couple of comrades who are willing to support me. You know, I realize that Southeast and Catherine has been locked in terms of representation. You know, the people they are willing to come out and make a change. As you can see, the numbers on the line, you know, it's very long. Persons came out today to give their support. And also, the process is moving very slow, I must admit, but persons still stop into the line and to ensure that they cast their vote in Southeast and Catherine.
That was Robert Miller there contesting the St. Catherine Southeastern seat. Javian, he's new to this seat, new to representational politics in an overt way, but has been behind the scenes for many campaigns. Is that the kind of strategy that is needed in a hardcore PNP seat like St. Catherine Southeastern?
Yeah, definitely. You need somebody who has experience, who knows how to work a seat, who can manage. I think it was what? In Juliet Cuthbert's seat that I think they said he worked the last time. So I think, you know, you hear a lot about him that he's an organizer. He's really, really good at what he can do. I think the problem for Colin there is that he's been there for quite some time. And if you look at the numbers as well, it's not as favorable for him. You see where in 2007 and 2016, JLP was able to increase. And I think if you have the same candidate and the numbers keep going down, then that's something for you to worry about, and you have to re-strategize and get back to basics and see what you're doing wrong and how you can improve. And interestingly, I know somebody who went to vote in that seat today, and they didn't really have a clue who the JLP person was, but they say they're going to look for the bell and just mark, and at the end of the day, they're still not even too sure if they know.
So it was more a vote against Colin Fagan than for Robert Miller. Well, Sanjay, in this constituency, as Javen mentioned, there would have been an increase in support for the Jamaica Labour Party. However, we decide why that increase has happened. It has occurred, but different divisions will make a difference here in the Jamaica Labour Party, being able to swing it from what has been a fairly firm and cemented People's National Party seat. Give me a sense of what you think the division breakdown is likely to look like if the Jamaica Labour Party was to take the seat.
If the JLP is to win this constituency, the JLP must outperform themselves in the Edgewater division and the Bridgeport division. Those are the two divisions that I'm looking at. Traditionally, the JLP would do well in Independent City, and the People's National Party would do well in Waterford division. But Edgewater, and especially Bridgeport, and we had a conversation on another program, Jody, where we spoke about Bridgeport.
Yes.
If the Jamaica Labour Party can get those voters out in that division, we may be in for a surprise. But this constituency is one that I will not declare. It's going to come right down to the wire.
I think it's going to be one of those constituencies where every single vote will count.
Everyone.
I especially think so because you indicated the constituencies. Waterford is a very strong PNP constituency. And so the Jamaica Labour Party would not only have to do well in the others, but well enough to compensate for a very strong support base for the People's National Party there in Waterford. Another constituency, though, to watch, Trelawney Northern. Let's go all the way to Trelawney. Another constituency to watch, another set of members of parliament that people want to either keep or get rid of. Sanjay, talk to me about that constituency.
Trelawney Northern.
You have to,
Yes, because again, we see Victor Wright, who is the incumbent of the People's National Party, and Tova Hamilton of the Jamaica Labour Party. Tova Hamilton is from the constituency. And it's a traditional constituency that normally votes for the People's National Party. This time around, it's up for grabs. And when you look at the breakdown, The People's National Party, well, the Jamaica Labour Party, they perform well in Duncan's division. The Jamaica Labour and also Falmouth division for the People's National Party. The JLP now, they have to ensure that in the Martha Brae division, they get out the votes and get out the votes well in that division, and also Sherwood Content. Because if they don't outperform in those two divisions, they're going to be in for trouble, because the Falmouth division, they vote overwhelmingly for the People's National Party. And in fact, the Falmouth division is what pushed Victor Wright over the edge in the last general elections.
The sweep of women for the Jamaica Labour Party included Tova Hamilton. She's one of those candidates to watch in this constituency. How serious a challenge do you think she poses to Victor Wright?
Well, you know, to be fair, I'm not very familiar with this constituency as Sanjay is, but Tova seems to be one of those hard workers, and I think her late appointment to the Senate might have given her a little bit more push, a little bit more status nationally in the constituency where she's from, and I think those kinds of things, you know, really resonate with people, that the people that them know, that them work with, that they lived with, etc., get certain kind of attention and working. But as Sanjay said, I think it's going to be a tough one, and you know, it's not too sure who it's going to be.
Well, I take you from a constituency you may be less familiar with, the one I'm sure you know about, St. Mary Southeastern, a big constituency that had a by-election that the nation watched, a by-election where Dr. Norman Dunn outperformed Dr. Shane Alexis. But they're both running once again in these 2020 elections, and both these men will think they have a good chance to win that seat. Tell me now, what are your thoughts on that constituency?
I think that's another tough one, but you know, based on what I've been hearing, Dunn has been doing some good work, but Shane has also been there with the people, working and organizing. You know, you saw Shane, for example, when they had the COVID, this is there, really working and making statements on behalf of the people and saying to the government, you have to do more for the constituents. So I think it's going to be a big challenge again, but Dunn seems to have done some good work in short time, and I think that resonates with people in a particular way. So he may have a little bit of favor, but I'm not counting Shane out as yet.
Not counting him out, especially since Norman Dunn won this with the entire political machinery of the Jamaica Labour Party behind him in that by-election. Will he be able to hold off the challenge of Dr. Shane Alexis on his own, you think, Sanjay?
It's going to be a tough fight, and I think also we have to pay attention to Anotta Bay, the Anotta Bay division. That's a division that we definitely have to watch. I think, as Javian mentioned, Shane Alexis would have been there doing some good work also, but at the same time, Norman Dunn actually is performing to the constituents. So therefore, it's going to be a fight right down to the finish. And again, organization for this constituency is key, and who can get the votes out in the critical areas. That's one constituency that we have to watch tonight.
We have to watch it, as many people are taking a look at several constituencies that we have highlighted here inside the show that we can't even call. It may be down to the wire that you have votes making all the difference. So another constituency that I want to highlight for you, that I want to tell me about, St. Andrew West Rural. Another constituency where you have a newcomer challenger in the PNP YO President Crystal Tomlinson, and then a more veteran challenger, Juliet Cuthbert Flynn, who is holding there as Member of Parliament. Can she fend off the challenge of the nationally popular but new candidate in Crystal Tomlinson, Javian?
Yeah, you know, tough seat again, two strong women, and I can't discount the fact that this is the kind of caliber of candidates we need for seats for the country. I think Juliet is a fighter, and she has been working, and I know quite a number of people who live in the constituency, and they have very, very good things to say about Juliet, but at the same time, you hear others who say she's not done as well a job, but perhaps it is because they favor the PNP more.
So you think they may be politically blinded?
It may be, notwithstanding I think there's some truth to it, because you can't do that much in one term. You know, the constituency is big, we have limited resources in the country, but Crystal is also a strong contender, and I think she'll put up a strong fight. It's going to be interesting, but important to note that Juliet has quite a margin.
Give me a quick assessment, Sanjay.
Same thing, Juliet has quite a margin. It's going to be very difficult for Crystal to gain on that margin that Juliet Cuthbert would have had. You would recognize, and looking on the history of that seat, Andrew Gallimore of the JLP would have had it before Paul Buchanan of the People's National Party won it, and then Juliet Cuthbert Flynn would have gotten that seat. It's going to be very tough for Crystal, but she's a fighter.
I think that's the message that we're getting from all these seats, that we have a slate of candidates that are looking to see who can prevail, and they're all willing to fight to make sure they do that. But overall, we asked people on social media to take a look at all the campaigns and ask them who had the better campaign. We have some responses for you. The better, some saying the JLP, some saying the PNP, and one response at least saying they both had the same strategy, which is interesting for many people who see there to be a dividing line between the two parties. Javian, when you look overall, who had the better strategy coming into election day?
Yeah, it's tough for me, but I think the JLP seems to have managed to have the better campaign. I think there were moments where they managed to crowd out the PNP quite a lot. So, for example, if you look at that All Angles interview, I think it was just brilliant how the JLP had their ads all over. Each time there was a break, and everywhere you went.
And that's the Dr. Peter Phillips All Angles interview, where
absolutely.
all the commercial breaks were Jamaica Labour Party ads.
JLP. They had some good songs, they had good messages, but I think overall it's important to note that unlike previous years, both parties have really given us real good ads. It wasn't a lot of bickering, wasn't a lot of he said, she said. I think the caliber, the quality has improved quite a lot.
Sanjay?
I think looking at both, the quality for both PNP and JLP, for this election, it has been good. I recognize that the bickering they didn't focus a lot on, but they were more focused on what is it that they want to do. One talk about building stronger and one talk about recovering. And I think looking at both, in my mind, they were equally matched.
Well, equally matched is what we have here, as our panelists saying that both parties ran good campaigns. Some of you, though, saying you picked parties, Jamaica Labour Party or the People's National Party, and some of you saying both did. Let's take a break here. Inside Decision 2020, or afternoon edition, as we take you through Jamaica deciding who forms the next government.
"2020, the year of the most twists and turns, and we've got you covered. Decision 2020 COVID-style coverage. From the opening of the polls across Jamaica, our teams will bring you ballot-by-ballot coverage. We'll give you the latest voters count, spiced with our experienced analysts. Which party will form the next government? TVJ's Decision 2020, we've got you covered.
It's the big one.
We are going to create the new Jamaica.
This team is ready to rescue Jamaica.
2020, the year of the most twists and turns, and we've got you covered. Decision 2020 COVID-style coverage. From the opening of the polls across Jamaica, our teams will bring you ballot-by-ballot coverage. We'll give you the latest voters count, spiced with our experienced analysts. Which party will form the next government? TVJ's Decision 2020, we've got you covered.
Reduce your risk of viral illnesses like the flu and coronavirus. Wash your hands frequently with soap and water. Cover your nose and mouth when coughing with a tissue and dispose of it. Avoid close contact with anyone with a cold or flu-like symptoms. If you become ill, please visit your doctor or the nearest health center and share your travel history. The flu and coronavirus can kill. Let's protect each other. A message from the Ministry of Health and Wellness.
It's the big one.
We are going to create the new Jamaica.
This team is ready to rescue Jamaica.
The date is set.
The general elections for the year 2020 is therefore Thursday, September 3rd, 2020.
Even with the COVID-19 pandemic, TVJ News has every beat covered. Join us for Decision 2020.
This team is ready to rescue Jamaica.
We are going to create the new Jamaica.
Decision 2020. Comprehensive election coverage. Weeknights in primetime news and our special election program. TVJ News, keeping you informed.
"2020, the year of the most twists and turns, and we've got you covered. Decision 2020 COVID-style coverage. From the opening of the polls across Jamaica, our teams will bring you ballot-by-ballot coverage. We'll give you the latest voters count, spiced with our experienced analysts. Which party will form the next government? TVJ's Decision 2020, we've got you covered.
It's the big one.
We are going to create the new Jamaica.
This team is ready to rescue Jamaica.
2020, the year of the most twists and turns, and we've got you covered. Decision 2020 COVID-style coverage. From the opening of the polls across Jamaica, our teams will bring you ballot-by-ballot coverage. We'll give you the latest voters count, spiced with our experienced analysts. Which party will form the next government? TVJ's Decision 2020, we've got you covered.
Reduce your risk of viral illnesses like the flu and coronavirus. Wash your hands frequently with soap and water. Cover your nose and mouth when coughing with a tissue and dispose of it. Avoid close contact with anyone with a cold or flu-like symptoms. If you become ill, please visit your doctor or the nearest health center and share your travel history. The flu and coronavirus can kill. Let's protect each other. A message from the Ministry of Health and Wellness.
It's the big one.
We are going to create the new Jamaica.
This team is ready to rescue Jamaica.
The date is set.
The general elections for the year 2020 is therefore Thursday, September the 3rd, 2020.
Even with the COVID-19 pandemic, TVJ News has every beat covered. Join us for Decision 2020.
This team is ready to rescue Jamaica.
We are going to create the new Jamaica.
Decision 2020. Comprehensive election coverage. Weeknights in primetime news and our special election program. TVJ News, keeping you informed.
"2020, the year of the most twists and turns, and we've got you covered. Decision 2020 COVID-style coverage. From the opening of the polls across Jamaica, our teams will bring you ballot-by-ballot coverage. We'll give you the latest voters count, spiced with our experienced analysts. Which party will form the next government? TVJ's Decision 2020, we've got you covered.
It's the big one.
We are going to create the new Jamaica.
This team is ready to rescue Jamaica.
2020, the year of the most twists and turns, and we've got you covered. Decision 2020 COVID-style coverage. From the opening of the polls across Jamaica, our teams will bring you ballot-by-ballot coverage. We'll give you the latest voters count, spiced with our experienced analysts. Which party will form the next government? TVJ's Decision 2020, we've got you covered.
Reduce your risk of viral illnesses like the flu and coronavirus. Wash your hands frequently with soap and water. Cover your nose and mouth when coughing with a tissue and dispose of it. Avoid close contact with anyone with a cold or flu-like symptoms. If you become ill, please visit your doctor or the nearest health center and share your travel history. The flu and coronavirus can kill. Let's protect each other. A message from the Ministry of Health and Wellness.
It's the big one.
We are going to create the new Jamaica.
This team is ready to rescue Jamaica.
The date is set.
The general elections for the year 2020 is therefore Thursday, September the 3rd, 2020.
Even with the COVID-19 pandemic, TVJ News has every beat covered. Join us for Decision 2020.
This team is ready to rescue Jamaica.
We are going to create the new Jamaica.
Decision 2020. Comprehensive election coverage. Weeknights in primetime news and our special election program. TVJ News, keeping you informed.
So much for rejoining us here on Decision 2020, where TVJ takes you through Jamaica voting for the persons who will form the next government. I'm Jody Ann Quarry, and we're inside the show giving you updates on constituencies to watch, but also constituencies across the island. And we have the update about everything going on with Trelawney McGowan here to give us the latest.
Thank you, Jody. So we're going to start first with an update on the voter turnout so far. The EOJ said at 3 p.m. it had 80% of divisions reporting, and the voter turnout was 31%. That has picked up from 16%, which was at 11 a.m. today. So that also is similar to the pattern of the outturn in 2016. Let us go now into central Westmoreland. It's currently being affected by heavy rainfall and low voter turnout as such. The seat is one being closely watched between incumbent PNP candidate Dwayne Vaz and the JLP challenger George Wright. However, the turnout for both parties varies from place to place. Over in East Portland, the voting process is described as being long and tedious, with some voters having to wait 3 hours or more. Our correspondent told us that in one area, there was no sanitization station at the start of the day, but that was eventually sorted out. There are also polling stations in the east where physical distancing was not being observed and masks were not being worn. Meanwhile, in West Portland, things are flowing smoothly, but also slow voters turnout. In Northern Trelawney, the race between PNP candidate Victor Wright and Tova Hamilton of the Jamaica Labour Party is heating up. Our correspondent says both candidates are confident. It's now a seat held by the PNP, which the JLP is hoping to flip at the end of the day. It gets better. Another seat in toss-up in St. Catherine Northeastern, now held by JLP. Our reporter Kirk Wright informed us earlier that the turnout was low and COVID-19 protocols are being observed. It's back to you, Jody.
Thanks so much for that, Trelawney. Trelawney giving us an update on constituencies all across the island. And some of those constituencies are ones that we hadn't yet discussed. Let me talk to you now. Westmoreland Central features here, and that's a constituency we had spoken about off air, but now it becomes a big one to discuss. Dwayne Vaz versus George Wright, a constituency that's up in the balance. How important is this constituency to the People's National Party, and what will it mean, Sanjay, if the JLP takes it?
If the JLP takes this constituency, it will be a major upset. Westmoreland overall is known as PNP country. And when you look at the history of Westmoreland and the voting pattern, traditionally they vote PNP. I'm a little surprised when a couple of months ago when I started to look at the data, I recognized that Westmoreland Central is actually at play. And the JLP could be in for a little bit surprise if the tide is going for the JLP, they could win, but they would have to perform well in the Petersfield division. That's where George Wright is the councillor. He's challenging Dwayne Vaz. The JLP would also have to do well in the Cornwall Mountain division. The PNP traditionally continuously do well in the Savlamar division, so I don't expect the JLP to win the Savlamar division. But Central Westmoreland, if the JLP wins tonight, trust me, I'm seeing over 40 seats for the JLP.
I see Javion shaking his head in agreement. Westmoreland Central, this is the bastion of the People's National Party. For them to lose this, what would it mean for the party?
I think it would be a shocker. I think it would mean that something is definitely changing in the country, and this idea of a PNP country is clearly going away. I think Dwayne is going to fight, but George is also working, and we've seen where the polls have said that the JLP candidate is in the lead. I think it's going to be important to just watch this one. It's going to be, again, the organization on the ground. I know there are some people who you've heard in the media that are displeased with Dwayne's leadership in the last couple of years. But as Sanjay said, Petersfield and Cornwall Mountain, the JLP has not really won any of the divisions in the general election. But those are the places where they've actually performed well enough. And so it's going to mean that they're going to have to outperform themselves, get them personal best and seasons best and general election best to win it if they want it.
Personal best, seasons best, general election best, all the best there if they're going to take Westmoreland Central from the People's National Party. But a constituency that the Jamaica Labour Party has captured, but it seems that COVID-19 protocols, slow lines and people just becoming frustrated may play a big part, is East Portland. East Portland now held by Anne-Marie Vaz and contested by Bishop Wright is now a constituency that we have to, Bishop Purcell Jackson is a constituency that we're going to have to watch now. If people aren't able to stay in lines to vote, will that affect the kind of results we'll see later tonight, Javion?
Yeah, definitely. It will definitely affect the votes, but I think Anne-Marie will still pull through. I think she's been working there. I mean, the entire Jamaica is excited for Eastern Portland. So, and I think the people from there are quite excited as well. And quite often you hear people saying how pleased they are with her leadership.
Well, we're going to take a break here inside Decision 2020, watching Jamaica vote for who will form the next government, and come back to you here on TVJ.
2020, the year of the most twists and turns, and we've got you covered. Decision 2020 COVID-style coverage. From the opening of the polls across Jamaica, our teams will bring you ballot-by-ballot coverage. We'll give you the latest voters count, spiced with our experienced analysts. Which party will form the next government? TVJ's Decision 2020, we've got you covered.
It's the big one.
We are going to create the new Jamaica.
This team is ready to rescue Jamaica.
2020, the year of the most twists and turns, and we've got you covered. Decision 2020 COVID-style coverage. From the opening of the polls across Jamaica, our teams will bring you ballot-by-ballot coverage. We'll give you the latest voters count, spiced with our experienced analysts. Which party will form the next government? TVJ's Decision 2020, we've got you covered.
Reduce your risk of viral illnesses like the flu and coronavirus. Wash your hands frequently with soap and water. Cover your nose and mouth when coughing with a tissue and dispose of it. Avoid close contact with anyone with a cold or flu-like symptoms. If you become ill, please visit your doctor or the nearest health center and share your travel history. The flu and coronavirus can kill. Let's protect each other. A message from the Ministry of Health and Wellness.
It's the big one.
We are going to create the new Jamaica.
This team is ready to rescue Jamaica.
The date is set.
The general elections for the year 2020. is therefore Thursday, September the 3rd, 2020.
Even with the COVID-19 pandemic, TVJ News has every beat covered. Join us for Decision 2020.
This team is ready to rescue Jamaica.
We are going to create the new Jamaica.
Decision 2020. Comprehensive election coverage. Weeknights in primetime news and our special election program. TVJ News, keeping you informed.
2020, the year of the most twists and turns, and we've got you covered. Decision 2020 COVID-style coverage. From the opening of the polls across Jamaica, our teams will bring you ballot-by-ballot coverage. We'll give you the latest voters count, spiced with our experienced analysts. Which party will form the next government? TVJ's Decision 2020, we've got you covered.
It's the big one.
We are going to create the new Jamaica.
This team is ready to rescue Jamaica.
2020, the year of the most twists and turns, and we've got you covered. Decision 2020 COVID-style coverage. From the opening of the polls across Jamaica, our teams will bring you ballot-by-ballot coverage. We'll give you the latest voters count, spiced with our experienced analysts. Which party will form the next government? TVJ's Decision 2020, we've got you covered.
Reduce your risk of viral illnesses like the flu and coronavirus. Wash your hands frequently with soap and water. Cover your nose and mouth when coughing with a tissue and dispose of it. Avoid close contact with anyone with a cold or flu-like symptoms. If you become ill, please.
Staying with us here inside Decision 2020, where we're taking you through the process of Jamaica deciding who will form the next government. I'm Jody Ann Quarry, and with me I have Sanjay Lewis and Javian Nelson here giving us expert advice and guidance as to what we should be looking forward to this evening. We have, though, a correspondent on the ground in St. Mary's Southeast, Anthony Lugg, who is here with us. Hi, Anthony.
Hi. Thanks, Jordan. So things here in the Southeastern Mayor constituency are pretty quiet. We've been driving through the area just to get a look at how things are progressing. Now, the St. Mary's Southeastern seat is the contest between the incumbent, which is JLP Dr. Norman Dunn, who's going up against Dr. Shane Alexis. I'm currently in the Anacostia area. I was in Richmond a little earlier, and again, the scenes here are pretty quiet, voters going in and out of the polling station. Now, here at the Anacostia High School, voters continue to make their way in and out the polling station, and they've been doing so relatively quickly. Now, COVID-19 protocols here at the polling station in St. Mary's Southeastern across the constituency caused several delays, and voters were extremely frustrated. Now, this constituency, I'd like to point out that it consists of 4 divisions. Those are Anacostia, Richmond, Castleton, and the Belfield division. Majority of the JLP's votes are expected to come from Anacostia, while most of the PNP's vote is expected to come from Belfield. It's important to point out as well that the Southeast St. Mary's seat has been won by the PNP 6 out of 9 times in a general election. However, following the passing of Dr. Winston Green, a by-election was held in October 2017 where Dr. Norman Dunn won the seat by over 900 votes. As I said earlier, the showdown is between Dr. Norman Dunn and Dr. Shane Alexis, and the question is, who will come out on top tonight, Jordan? I know our viewers will be looking out to that. Now, based on information we've been picking up on the ground, both candidates have been doing some work in the constituency, and that is exactly why this is one of the seats that you would want to watch. Now, Norman Dunn is looking to widen his margin, and Dr. Shane Alexis said he's hoping to cover some ground and will come out on top today. We will be monitoring the situation here and provide updates a little later.
Thank you so much for that update, Anthony Lugg, there in St. Mary, Southeastern. It's important for us to figure out what's going on in specific pockets of the country. Everything's not happening all at the same place and the same time. We actually had the opportunity to speak to some of the candidates, and so Dr. Shane Alexis spoke with us earlier today. Let's listen.
How confident are you winning Southeast St. Mary?
Today is another good day for Southeast St. Mary. The People's National Party is ready. We've been executing our plan, and at 5 o'clock we believe we'll come out victorious. So far, people are participating, as is the custom here in Southeast St. Mary. We usually average one of the highest voter turnouts in the country. So far, I think we're going to hold up to that. Maybe a bit more. That favors us, and our people have been coming out and working very hard. The ground is ready for change, and we're going to give them the change that they're looking for at 5 o'clock. I think our party is looking good across the island. We have a good message. We have a great team. At this point, though, each seat has to bring it home for the People's National Party, and I intend to put Southeast St. Mary in the winning column.
So you just heard Dr. Shane Alexis, their challenger in St. Mary's Southeastern, telling us about his plans to take it over from the Jamaica Labour Party. It's a constituency now held by Dr. Norman Dunn for the JLP. How reasonable is it? You spoke to us earlier, Sanjay, about Annata Bay being critical if they're going to win this.
It is critical. The JLP must ensure that they maintain the lead in Annata Bay, and the JLP also have to ensure Castleton, they widen that lead. When the PNP won that constituency, what they did, the PNP ensured that they got more votes in Castleton, because they definitely cannot win Annata Bay. So if the JLP can ensure that they get enough votes in Castleton Division and also Annata Bay, which is their stronghold, then the JLP will be comfortable tonight.
I think I want to move you to another constituency, one we haven't spoken of just yet, Manchester Central. It's one that has featured a lot, not necessarily because of only its, I suppose, competitiveness, but also some of the drama surrounding that constituency. In that constituency of Rhoda Moy Crawford for the Jamaica Labour Party against the incumbent Peter Bunting from the People's National Party, and the third party independent candidate in Rowan Chung. In that constituency, Rowan Chung says he's looking to get 8,000 votes. Help me assess in this constituency who is likely to win in Manchester Central. Well,
again, it's interesting because Manchester Central is just always a hot seat. And I remember when it was Sally Portia's, when it was Danville Walker, now Rhoda. So it seems like one of those seats where no matter what, even if you think you're sure, you have to work very, very hard and you have to be very organized. Interesting that this independent candidate has come on the stream. I don't think he'll win. Impossible, but it's interesting that we've had an independent candidate who has had national ads, which for me is very strange. It's not something I've seen before in my little short time on earth. What kind of impact that will have, I doubt will have much of an impact, but certainly I think it has really helped with the drama. But I hear Rhoda Crawford is really working hard in that seat, and I know Bunting is also a very hard worker, and he says he's a performance boss.
The performance boss who likely will challenge for the presidency of the People's National Party. So you have to have a seat to have a chance. How do you assess the chance of Peter Bunting in this constituency as Rhoda Moy Crawford has been able to cut into, it seems, his lead, and that may be reflected later this evening?
Well, certainly for the independent candidate, I don't think that the persons down there will taste the coffee. But what I will say is that Peter Bunting will definitely win this constituency. Rhoda Crawford is doing some work, and you will see that she's on the ground, but money plays a big factor, and Peter Bunting has the funds to fund his own campaign. So definitely, when you look at that constituency, Peter Bunting will definitely win. You may see, just may, a reduced
Definitely win, you say?
Yes, he will win that constituency. Maybe a reduced majority, but I'm calling it for Peter Bunting.
Wow, okay, so already you're making good predictions there as to who is going to win, and we're going to hold Sanjay to those as we go on through the show. We're going to now go, though, to St. Andrew West Rural, where we'll get a report on the ground from our reporter there, Krista. Thanks, Krista. Hi.
I'm standing just outside the JLP's constituency office in Stonehill, where just a few moments ago, the PNP's candidate, Crystal Tomlinson, arrived to fanfare from her supporters. She then moved on to the Hart Academy just a few meters away, where the JLP incumbent, Juliet Cuthbert Flynn, is trying to sort out voting issues. Are you hearing anything about a machine malfunction that is contributing to the long wait here at the Parliament?
I have not. I'm not sure if it has to do with the fingerprint machine that they have in the polling station I use, number 7. But that has been the line that can't move from morning. So I don't know if it was malfunctioning. It did not malfunction for me. I was in and out in about a minute and a half.
So while ago, them say, come now, we can't walk up and just do that.
Let me talk to Andre.
Normally, I never have this problem.
Because the EOJ thing is also down, and I can't get anybody.
By afternoon, the Belvedere Main Road in Red Hills was a sea of green and orange as the train of JLP and PNP supporters kept rolling in. COVID protocols meant longer wait times at the Red Hills Primary School for some voters, and in at least one instance, it may have even cost a vote.
This morning was only one person that came across, and I encouraged him to come back because he was here just at the peak hour. When you find person was just trying to hustle after work.
What's your experience like voting in a pandemic?
Well, this is good for Red Hill St. Andrew, and I think it is also good for the whole country. As we can see, we like how it looks.
You say what is good? What are you talking about?
From the PNP side, we feel good. We're happy about that.
Why are you feeling good?
Because I see winnings, I see victory, I see better Jamaica. Right now, as we're standing here.
Why are you so confident of victory?
Well, it was for us to what I see, and to what I see the PNP, them a deal with the thing. I really love PNP from birth. I never give up off of PNP, no time.
So you're voting because Crystal is a PNP, or you're voting because of what you like? You hear Crystal say?
Well, I'm voting because of Crystal, and I'm voting because I love PNP party.
Yeah, man, I Scott Bert at work. And the work come down through run, work same way. All of, the team look good, it's a good look. But now I vote because Labour is safe. Labour don't put on my pot. I'm a Labour. It's hard working, man. You have to say what we vote for. Now I vote because the crowd that's the Labour. No. You understand? I vote for issues. The health, the school, all these things are for poor people who can't afford it. I probably a little more fat and I try to go to prep school, but a lot of people go to primary. So I'm say them a deal with the thing. Yeah, I have to vote for them. PNP side look smaller. Back in the PJ days, you used to see more PNP come out. I don't know if they migrate, them run rather than can't take the pressure. But you don't see no PNP again. Look for yourself. It's a trickler PNP, 1 and 2, 1 and 2. That can't win election. That cannot win.
And that was a report from Krista Campbell there in West Rural St. Andrew, giving us a sense of what's going on the ground in that constituency. Party supporters saying they say less of one, more of the other. They believe, they don't believe. Help us understand how that works out, especially in constituencies like we can take a look at right now, St. Catherine North Eastern, where we see Currency Morrison and also Senior Smith vying there. We've always spoken about that party base for the People's National Party. Currency Morrison now going into a constituency that has just been, I suppose, released by its former Member of Parliament, Leslie Campbell. Is this one of those places where that sort of party loyalty may play out?
Definitely, I think she's going to have to bank on those people, but also her own skills. I understand she's a woman who's very much a people person. And I think that's going to be important because seemingly there were some challenges with organization on the ground there in that constituency. Bit of a late start for her, but not impossible for her to keep it. But the PNP has said this is one of the seats that they're going for.
I'm going to pick up your comments, Sanjay, after the break, or after this report, because we have Kurt right there in St. Catherine Northeast giving us an update as to what's going on in the constituency.
I'm in the Northeast constituency of St. Catherine, and voting has been going slow but steady. The other thing I can tell you too is that persons, for the most part, have been observing the Ministry of Health protocol to sanitize, keep their physical distance, at least at the polling stations, and for all divisions that we have visited, persons have been temperature checked before being allowed to go in and cast their ballot. This seat, however, is a battleground seat, and since 1944, universal adult suffrage, the JLP has had more hold on this seat. For the 14 times that there have been elections, the JLP have won 11 times. The last time the JLP's Leslie Campbell wrestled the seat from the PNP's Phillips Mitchell by 121 votes. But he later stepped aside to make way for Carissa Morrison. She's a senator. She's also an educator. Now she's going up against the PNP's Oswes Senior Smith. Both persons, however, are not new to the political landscape. Carissa Morrison lost to Patricia Harris in a local government election, and then to Natalie Nita in a general election. As it relates to Oswald Senior Smith, he lost to Shaheen Robinson in the 2007 general election. Both candidates now are optimistic of gaining victory, but that's left to the voters now.
And that was a report from Kurt right there in St. Catherine Northeast. Sanjay, tell me quickly about not only St. Catherine Northeastern, but overall your anticipated results later tonight.
So for St. Catherine Northeastern, it's not new for the JLP to have new candidates being thrust in at the last moment. You remember with Gregory Mayer that happened. You also remember the battle between Phyllis Mitchell and Abe Dabdoo back in the days. What it comes down to, as Javian mentioned, is style and also organization. Carissa is known to have a very people personality, and I think that may be the clincher for her tonight. But again, this is a seat that I won't call. I won't be so confident about this seat for any of the political parties.
Yes.
But again, it comes down to organization and also the style of the person. Overall, this election will be won by whichever party is more organized. We have said that for so many seats, and we have been very consistent about that. Who can get out the votes? It's now minutes to 5. They should have all the votes that they need in the box, or they should have their voters in the line, because they would have known from about 3 o'clock how many additional votes they would need to get the runners, to get those persons in the line at this moment.
That will make the biggest difference tonight for whoever wins this election. Thanks so much for joining myself, Sanjay Lewis, and Javian Nelson in the afternoon edition of Decision 2020. Jamaica votes for the next government of this country. Thanks so much for joining us.
"2020, the year of the most twists and turns, and we've got you covered. Decision 2020 COVID-style coverage. From the opening of the polls across Jamaica, our teams will bring you ballot-by-ballot coverage. We'll give you the latest voters' count, spiced with our experienced analysts. Which party will form the next government? TVJ's Decision 2020, we've got you covered.
It's the big one.
We are going to create the new Jamaica.
This